This is the appointed time and we have our quorum. Today's meeting will end at 6:15. If necessary, I can extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Let me remind members, if there is any direct or indirect pecuniary interest related to the items under discussion, please, before you speak, disclose the nature of the interest under Rule 83A and 84. And also I draw your attention to regulations in relation to voting under Rule 84. I'd like to declare that I'm a consultant of the People's Bank of the Bank of China. Item 1 is recommendation of the Establishment Subcommittee made on the 6th of February 2025. This is in relation to a recommendation of EC 2024-25-9, a retention of one-time limited supernumerary Deputy Chief Fire Officer DSC1 or D1 equivalent post in the Fire Services Department with effect from the 1st of April 2025 or with immediate effect upon approval of the Finance Committee, whichever is later, up to 31st of March 2028 for the continuous formulation, implementation and steering of the execution of various measures relating to the fire safety policies of buildings, including commercial, composite and domestic and industrial buildings, with a view to enhancing fire safety standards of all buildings. Under paragraph 3A of the Finance Committee rules, as the ESC did not make recommendations for further discussion, and we don't have 3 members or more asking for discussion, so this will not be discussed further. So I now put this item, FCR 2024-25, number 47, to the vote. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Anyone who object to this project? This is Mr. Dick Chi Yun. He opposes to the suggestion. Majority of members support this item. So this is endorsed. Item 2, FCR 2024-25, 48.
This item seeks approval of the recommendation of the Public Works Subcommittee made at its meeting on the 24th of January 2025 regarding the proposal in paper EC 2024-25-10, retention of one-time limited supernumerary Assistant Director of Immigration post in the Immigration Department with effect from the 1st of April 2025 or with immediate effect upon approval of the FC, whichever is the later, up to the 31st of March 2027 to continue to steer the handling of non-refoulement claims and step up the claimant-related measures. Like the previous item, the Establishment Subcommittee did not recommend further discussion by the FC. That's why this committee is not having a further discussion on this. I now put this item, FCR 2024-25-48, to vote. Would members in favor of this proposal raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. Dr. Dick Chi Yun is against this proposal. I think the majority of the members present are in favor of this proposal. This proposal is approved. Last item on today's agenda, FCR 2024-25-49. This item seeks approval of the recommendation of the Public Works Subcommittee made at its meeting on the 24th of January 2025 regarding the proposal in paper PWSC 2024-25-17. It seeks FC's approval on a total allocation of $41.6158 billion for 2025-26 for the block allocations under the Capital Works Reserve Fund. The Public Works Subcommittee recommended further discussion by this committee, and there aren't at least 3 members jointly requesting to overturn such recommendation. Therefore, this committee is going to have a further discussion on this paper. The relevant officials are in attendance today. We have the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, Mr. Christopher Ho, as well as his team here. They are here to address members' questions. Before I open the floor for questions, I will ask Mr. Christopher Ho to give an opening remark. Thank you, Chairman. I'll now give a brief introduction. Later on, my colleagues from different departments will answer members' questions in detail. Each year, as you all know, the government seeks funding approval from this Finance Committee for the block allocations under the Capital Works Reserve Fund for the coming year, so that in the next financial year, the relevant departments can continue to implement the more than 10,000 minor works projects which benefit society and people's livelihood. This year, the government proposes a total of $41,615.8 million for the block allocations under the CWRF for the year 2025 and 26. The funding proposal involves three types of projects, of which about $14.3 billion are related to public works projects, about $2.5 billion are for non-works items, and about $24.8 billion are the expenditure on land acquisition. There are a total of 26 block allocations of heads, including public works items such as landslip preventive measures, refurbishment for government buildings, drainage works, water works, highway department maintenance, as well as advanced works for projects being planned. The block allocation arrangement allows the government to adopt a flexible, pragmatic, and effective approach to promptly kickstart minor works projects that benefit the community or meet operational needs. The arrangement also enables the Finance Committee to make better use of its time to focus on items of high value or larger scale. There are a total of 13,000 works-related items under the proposed allocation for the year 2025 and 26, including about 11,000 items that had already commenced in the previous year or before, and about 2,000 new items proposed to be created by different departments. We understand that with the government's tight fiscal position, members are concerned about the project estimates under the block allocations. I hope members would understand that the controlling officers of the block allocations have stepped up efforts in scrutinizing the justifications, urgency, and significance of each project so as to set priorities for each item. This is to ensure that the projects adhere to the no-frills principle and that we only commit resources as and when justified. On cost control, the Project Strategy and Governance Office under the Development Bureau examined the project estimates for Category D items, which range from $30 million to $15 million. The office assessed the reasonableness of the project estimates and made suggestions to enhance the designs of individual projects. The government will continue to carefully scrutinize the priorities of the items under the block allocations and ensure that the funding will be well spent. The government consulted the Public Works Subcommittee on the 22nd and 24th of January this year and obtained member support for the government's proposal. We hope that this committee will support the funding proposal for the coming year so that the government can carry on with the minor works projects and land acquisition that are closely linked to people's livelihood. As the chairman said, there are more than 20 representatives from the relevant bureaus and departments here today, and we're happy to answer your questions. Thank you, Secretary. 21 members have pressed the request to speak button. They will speak in the following sequence: Dr. Chow Meng Kong, Mr. Lam Chun Sing, Dr. Johnny Mr. Frankie Yan, Reverend Peter Kuhn, Mr. Chen Xiu Hong, Mr. Kenneth Leung, Mr. Kissen Yang, Mr. Michael Lee, Mr. Rock Chen, Mr. Chao Xiu Chong, Mr. Chen Kim Po, Mr. Michael T, Mr. Michael Look, Professor William Wong, Mr. Benson Look, Dr. Wendy Hong, Mr. Chen Wen Yan, and Ms. Carmen Khan. And Mr. Sunny Tan has just pressed the button as well. In total, 22 members. Dr. Chow Meng Kong, please. Thank you. I am a consultant of the Asian Infrastructure Alliance. I, in general, support this proposal. It involves some $41 billion, which is similar to the amount approved last year. Land acquisition accounts for 60% of the funding. That is about $24 billion, which accounts for 1/5 of the government's fiscal deficit. My question is this: are there any ways for us to deal with the land compensation matters in the Northern Metropolis? In the coming 20 years or so, the government will focus on the development of the Northern Metropolis. So this will be a regular expenditure in the 60s to the 80s. The government issued letters of land exchange. The government once owed debts for 100 hectares of land. In the near future, the government will have to make a huge amount of compensations because of land exchange. Will the government follow the practice of issuing letters of land exchange to reduce the amount of compensation? On Head 708, capital subventions, it is said that $700 million will be involved in refurbishing schools. For example, one school in Wanchai will be converted into a new building. The government adopts traditional construction methods which could be more efficient than MIC. There are yearly 2 to 3 schools that require refurbishment. Will the government adopt a more efficient construction method instead of using MIC for all construction projects? Mr. Hu may not have enough time to direct the relevant government official to speak. Perhaps just raise your hand. Yes, Mr. Hu. On the question about the Northern Metropolis, I will invite Ms. Yong to speak. She is the director of the Northern Metropolis office. As for the other question, I'll invite the Education Bureau to reply. Yes, Ms. Yong. I thank the member for the questions. Concerning land acquisition in the Northern Metropolis for development, apart from making compensation, are there other ways? Well, currently, there is an enhanced version of New Town Development Plan. We have something called land exchange in situ. Landowners, if in our new development areas, own lands that can match the future use of the town, we can use this arrangement. For example, in Kutong North and Fanling North, we had land exchange in situ. We allowed applicants to apply for land exchange if the land could be used for private development. So without acquiring the land, we allowed for land exchange in situ in these cases. This will save the government's money on making compensations to landowners. On letters of land exchange, well, we do not have plans to resume this practice. The Secretary for Development in various occasions mentioned that we would explore the following ways. For example, say the landowner in new development areas of the Northern Metropolis owns certain land there. And the landowner is willing to surrender the land. Could that offset the cost of land exchange? Take for the development of Shanpu Wetland Park, we are exploring this practice. For the large-scale land disposal approach, we also issued EOIs to see if developers were interested in adopting this approach. I believe we all understand what you are trying to say. We have to make good use of our time. Now I will invite the surveyor to reply to the other questions. In relation to MIC, modular integrated construction method, it is a method recommended by the relevant bureau. The merit about this method is that a lot of the procedures could be carried out in factories. In terms of safety as well as speed, it surpasses the traditional construction method. A lot of new buildings, such as schools, refurbishment, could adopt MIC method. So we try as much as possible to adopt this construction method. Mr. Lam Chung-sing.
Thank you. They are asking for $41.6 billion despite the deficit. We believe that some of the projects have to do with long-term developments and investments, and therefore they are worthy projects, in particular when it comes to public housing and other developments. In particular, in the private sector, we are seeing a reduction in terms of the number of projects, and therefore, if we are going to reduce public works projects further, then the construction sector will suffer even more. And therefore, workers in the construction sector would be adversely affected. And therefore, I'd like to understand a bit more about Head 711 housing. I understand that when compared to last year, there was a reduction by some 21%, even though the actual amount reduced is not very substantial. This is mainly about some preparatory stage investigation and so on. But does that mean that in the next 3-4 years, in terms of the number of works projects in this area, there will be a reduction? If that is the case, then what is the impact on the construction sector? So this is my first question. The second group of questions is about Head 710, computerization. Well, my understanding is that when it comes to computerization, well, there is further room for further savings, because if you look at that paper, well, at the ITB panel, we already discussed that, and for this particular year, funding has increased by some $390 million. In other words, that has up by some 18%. Does that mean that for smaller computer system, is there any further room for further compression or rationalization? My understanding is that it's not that easy, because in terms of the functions and also when it comes to administration of different laws, and therefore it's not that easy to rationalize the use of such systems. But then is that really the case? Because I can give you some examples. For example, for basic law and also the national security law testing, well, you have 3 separate systems to do the testing. And also when it comes to e-certificates, you talk about digitalization, and also for the central database for certain results and so on. So mainly it's about the same thing. So do we need to have 3 systems? And also another example is about the LCSD. There are 2 systems. One would be to enhance the duty roster system, and also is about enhancement of the duty roster for public swimming pools. So they are from the same department. Do we need to have 2 separate systems? And there are many others. Is about chatbot systems for different departments. Well, for the talent office, they also have a chatbot system to answer questions from the talents. So they are talents, and therefore, for the basic information, well, all you need to do is to browse the web, and then you'll be able to get all the answers. In fact, in the community, there are also many support systems for these talents. So when these talents want to ask more in-depth or personalized questions, then of course the chatbot might not be able to help in, and therefore, to have such chatbot systems in place, it may not be able to reduce the manpower for the office. And therefore, have you done any assessment on the utilization rate, and is there any room for further savings? 2 questions. Okay, I'll ask Mr. Wong from the Housing Bureau to answer the first question, and then on the computerization system and also the enhancement systems and so on, I'll ask Mr. Mack to answer. So that's Donald Mack from the Digital Policy Office. Okay. Well, on the housing-related item, we are going to conduct investigations and also feasibility studies, and also for minor works projects. And it's not about major infrastructure projects, because on this occasion, our works items, well, the cash flow demand is different, but then there has been a reduction by some $30 million, and some of the feasibility studies are nearing completion, and therefore we are actually moving into the design stage. And also for some minor works projects, well, given the fact that they have completed and therefore the cash flow demand has already been reduced, well, members wonder whether or not that would have an impact on the construction sector. In fact, this is just an initial study for the minor works projects, and therefore for the major projects, it has no impact whatsoever. Okay, Mr. Mack. Yes, on the question raised by Mr. Lam, I'd like to explain for Head 710. Well, we are asking for about $2.5 billion. In fact, much of it, actually up to 80% of that, is to support the existing 794 existing projects cash flow. And then for the remaining 20%, that's set aside for some new projects. And of course, as we understand during the past few years, this term of government has been working very hard to promote the introduction of IT technology in order to improve the efficiency of this government so that we'd be able to do better and faster. And also different departments have been working very hard to tie in with that initiative, and therefore during the past couple of years there have been many new projects that have been implemented. As you can see, well, we have some new initiatives. For example, well, we have the one-stop service online, and also we are also asking departments to complete those initiatives within this year, that is 2025. And also let me explain a bit about the 20%, that is about $250 million. That's the ceiling for the reserve. And of course, we would also be monitoring closely as to whether or not there is room for further enhancement. Can we do it cheaper, and can we do it better and make and achieve better results? And therefore, all these projects would also be considered for further integration and so on. In fact, we are asking different departments to provide immediate convenience so that there should be one-stop window for raw citizens, so that they would not be required to go to different departments and windows for help. And then for chatbots, we will be closely monitoring whether or not is needed. In particular, given the tight budget situation, if there is no need for that, we would not rule out the possibility that we would not approve such projects in the end. And also for the LCSD's projects, well, they might be very similar. And then in the process of scrutiny, we would also be discussing with the departments concerned to see if they can add that up so that there can be further integration in order to reduce costs further. Next, Mr. Johnny Ng. Chairman, I'd like to declare interest. I'm an independent director of the China United Communications. Well, I support the funding proposal because many of them have to do with livelihood-related issues, but of course we should only use money where it's needed, and therefore we will have to be very careful. Well, on the CWRF, when it comes to computerization, in fact, the increase has been rather substantial, by some 18.3%, amounting to some $2.5 billion. And the paper also says that in the coming few years, there are some ongoing projects, and there are also some new projects, and there would be additional cash flow requirement. So can you give us further justifications as to the cash flow requirement? Second, coming back to the specific projects, I can see that different departments, including the Lands Department, the Labor Department, there are also some information security projects. They would need to procure some hardware amounting to some $20 million and $16 million. And also the Digital Policy Office would also have to spend about $18 million on IT auditing work. So for different departments, they might be in urgent need of such security facilities and devices. So can we adopt a single standard for the entire government, so that different departments do not have to do it on their own, and that would also result in better savings and cost effectiveness? And also for the auditing cost, would that be sufficient? Because you're talking about many departments, and also you're talking about many hackers and a lot of security issues and so on. You will have to spend a lot of efforts in doing a better job. So that's the second question. Another issue also has to do with the IP department. You will have to spend $6.2 million on an AI system to verify the copyright and also IP and so on. So how would that be spent in hardware or software and so on? Because on the mainland, much of that would be OpenAI format, and therefore that's free for downloading and so on. So how are you going to go about it? 3 questions altogether. Thank you. All the questions have to do with computerization work, and therefore I'll invite Mr. Mack from the Digital Policy Office to answer the question. Yes, on the question raised by Mr. Ng on cash flow, as we said just now, we are asking for some $2.5 billion. In fact, much of that has gone to some 789 projects. For the remaining 18%, about $450 million, those are for new projects. If you look at the breakdown when compared to last year, actually last year for new projects, we set aside some $25 billion. And this year, actually, there has been a reduction. Well, actually, in the past few years, we've been pressing ahead with this initiative so that departments would be making use of technology to enhance its services and to enhance their services and efficiency. And much of the cash flow has been spent on the ongoing projects. And therefore, when it comes to new projects, this year we have looked at the situation and therefore we have decided to cut it. And some members have also asked about the situation with regard to the DPO, the Digital Policy Office. There is a project relating to security auditing. In fact, when compared to other departments doing the same, it's somewhat different because we would be doing that in conjunction with the different departments. We would be randomly checking 1 or 2 departments requiring closer look. But then the objective of doing this is not just about whether or not they have implemented all the patches to plug the loopholes of the security systems and so on. It's about the workflow in terms of management, whether or not they are in compliance with our overall requirements. For example, if we identify a software loophole, then the contingency measures that have been put in place, are they adequate? For example, will they be making an assessment as to the impact, and also what are their plans to reset the system so that they would be able to plug the loophole. So the emphasis would be somewhat different. And also on the CIPO, the Copyright and Intellectual Property Office, well, for the AI system in place, well, when compared to the past, when an applicant is applying for a trademark, for example, then they would come up with a drawing, and when they submit that drawing, the CIPO would also be using the AI system because the AI would be able to provide technical support so that the applicant would be able to foresee whether or not there are similar drawings or images that have been registered in the system. And if that is the case, then they can redesign their proposal. And then the CIPO would also be using that so that would also facilitate our colleagues when it comes to scrutinizing the application. If some of the trademarks have been registered, then they would reject that application for registration. So the entire project has already used the DPO's computer vision device that had been used in the past, and therefore in terms of the development, we will be focusing on the workflow of the CIPO, the entire system's needs, and also how we can make better use of this device in order to improve the workflow. Next, Mr. Ngan Men Yu, Chairman, I support the funding proposal, but then with regard to the East Kowloon waterfront promenade, I'd like to make some inquiries because, as I said last time, well, along the East Kowloon waterfront near To Kwa Wan and Kai Tak and Cha Kwa Leng, Yau Tong, well, for the sections that have not been connected, I'd like to know whether or not there would be an interim report so that the community would have an initial view about how that works, because it's expected that that report would only be completed in 2027. And also on top of that, well, the involvement of the public and electrical members would also be something that I'm concerned about. Yes, can I ask the can I ask Mr. Ma to answer that question? Yes, thank you. Well, I can see that Mr. Ngan has been very concerned about the East Kowloon development. Well, actually, last time at the PWSC, we already responded to that, the relevant study. Well, we expected that that would start in the middle of this year, and then by 2027, it would be completed. And we would also be looking at some of the areas or sections that have not been connected, and then we would look at how technically they can be connected. For example, recently, under the Protection of the Harbour Ordinance, with the amendments in place, that would also give us an opportunity to connect some of those unconnected sections. We are grateful to the members' concerns, and then we will bring it back to the Harbourfront office so that in the interim, we will be resorting to different channels so that we can maintain close liaison with the district council as well as the local representatives, and then we will be collecting their views, and then that would be input into the study so that we can come up with a better proposal. Thank you.
Next member to speak, Reverend Peter Kuhn. Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 questions. First, I want to follow up on the use of MIC construction method for schools. I asked a lot of members from the sector. They said that if MIC is not used, a lot of times there's 30% of room for us to compress the cost. The government always says it's faster to use the MIC method. However, is it cheaper? Also, at the same time, can you ask for 2 quotations during the tendering process? If you set a certain percentage where MIC has to be used, of course it would be expensive. My other question is about the opening up of a platform for school directors. How come it cost about $10 million to develop this platform? I'll ask the RHSD to address the first question. The second question I'll defer to Mr. Mack from the DPO. Yes, Mr. Lee from the RHSD. According to the technical requirement, we have to adopt the MIC method for schools' construction works. Is it more expensive this way? Well, according to our data, it's definitely faster. In terms of the cost, is more or less the same compared to using a traditional method. Will you compare the 2 quotation in your future tendering process, like Reverend Peter Kuhn suggested? I'll defer to the Development Bureau to address that. The MIC method is a rather new construction method recommended by the Development Bureau. Just now, we've talked about the merits of using this method. I'm not going to repeat it here. On the use of MIC for school construction works, we've been in talks with the relevant teams in charge of these construction projects. We have taken into consideration the number of modules or components we have to use, as well as the number of stories involved in the school, as well as the cost effectiveness of using the MIC method. We've been in talks with the RHSD as well as school bodies involved in these projects under Head 708. We have a technical circular. We also, however, have to factor into the cost and other factors. If need be, we might exempt schools or the relevant teams from using the MIC method. Please rest assured that there is a mechanism in place to help us adopt the MIC method. If it is inappropriate, we won't adopt this construction method. Well, as far as I understand, there is never a case where MIC method could be exempted. Well, according to my understanding, well, I don't have the relevant information at hand now. There aren't many schools involved in this type of projects. So far, there have haven't been any cases where the MIC method could be exempted. For some schools, advanced works are being carried out now, and we talked to the schools where the MIC method would be appropriate. So there is a mechanism in place for us to decide whether the MIC method is suitable. So is it more expensive to use the MIC method? Well, according to Mr. Lee from the RHSD, the cost is more or less the same. In relation to the cost, we carried out some studies in the past. We did not study the cost for using MIC method in schools in particular. However, we can save the cost on labor if we adopt this method. A lot of the procedures can be carried out in factories, and because of this, we can compress the cost. Please rest assured that we want to strive for efficiency and cost effectiveness as we adopt the MIC method. If it is found that by using the MIC method we cannot achieve the cost effectiveness, we will consider seriously whether it is necessary for us to stick to the MIC method. So please rest assured that there is a mechanism in place. Well, you have repeated this point a number of times. Perhaps, Deputy Commissioner, please give us a brief reply. The platform for school directors will require a cash flow of about $2 million. This is not just a registration platform for the submission of e-forms. So different people involving the applicant as well as schools and the Education Bureau will be using this platform. There has to be proof that the applicant got the support to become a part of the management committee before the Education Bureau would give the endorsement. The Education Bureau will have to check whether the applicant is bankrupt or has any conviction records. And whether the applicant has been complying with the relevant rules of the management committee. It is expected that every year there will be some 9,000 such applications, and the Education Bureau will have to deal with all these applications. A lot of times these applications come in batches, and the Education Bureau has to check the identity of the applicants as well as their compliance with the rules. And with the e-platform, it will provide a lot of convenience because the applicant will be able to sign the forms electronically, and through the platform, the Education Bureau will be able to ask applicants to provide further documents, and the entire process is digitalized. It is believed that by using this platform, the Education Bureau can save 20% of the time required. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, at the panel on ITB as well as the other panel, we have talked about the other heads, and this time around I'd like to focus on head 710, and there's an increase of $390 million for this item, which represents an increase of 18.3%. I want to know if it is necessary to have this head. Would the government be able to compress the cost? According to the administration, the DPO will, based on the computerization plan submitted by different departments, initiate more effective items. Well, I trust that the DPO will play the role as a gatekeeper here. Now I'd like to follow up on the ITIB's paper on the computerization item. There are 4 types of projects. First, on implementing e-government services. Second, enhancing the efficiency of the government. And third, the system as well as the 4th item, information security. According to different departments, about $240 million could be saved. In total, about $660 million of recurrent expenditure could be saved every year. I have 2 questions about this. First, how did the government come up with such an estimate? Is it that different departments submitted their figures and the ITIB just accepted the estimates? Or did the ITIB examined the figures provided by different departments? Also, last year, the government said it has completed the auditing works for 73 departments. Apart from checking the expenditure of different departments, did the auditing department check how much manpower has been saved? I believe the DPO will reply to these questions. Yes. Mr. Chen raised 2 major questions. First, on the amount of money that could be saved provided by different departments. After each department has come up with an estimate, it would have to provide a report to show whether the target could be achieved. And all these reports have been put on record. The government has been asking different departments to reduce manpower and compress cost. So different departments will have to work towards a target. On the question about auditing, the key is not about saving money. The major purpose is to ask the different departments to make use of technology to enhance the efficiency as well as the quality of services. We look at whether efficiency could be enhanced through the use of technology. And when we apply for funding, they will have to tell us how much manpower and how much money they could be saved. And as mentioned, they would have to submit a report to see whether they were able to achieve the target. Well, I believe Mr. Chen also asked the question of whether the expenditure saved were reflected in the budget. Well, you approved certain computerization projects for different departments, and after they have completed the project, they would have to submit a report. However, you could not be certain whether manpower and money could actually be saved. How could you ensure that the different departments actually managed to save the amount of money they claimed? Mr. Mack? A lot of times the manpower or money saved was nominal. For example, they might be able to save manpower by 0.01. It doesn't mean that they could slash a head count. we've been talking about reducing manpower. And while they strive to do this, this would be reflected in the budget. Yes, Mr. Chen. Well, according to the administration, because of the computerization plan, different departments manage to save 0.01 manpower each. However, the administration, in order to consolidate the establishment as well as assess the demand for manpower, it would have to have a mechanism.
Well, this is what Mr. Chen was concerned about, and Mr. Mack, you might not be able to answer that question, so please take it back to further consider. Next, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Yes, I support the overall funding proposal, but then there are two specific questions that I'd like to put to the Bureau. Well, in Appendix 3, page 10, about government buildings. So I'm concerned about the Kai-Tak cruise terminal, so about the luggage hall and also the toilets and so on. So that would involve some $29 million. Well, the cruise terminal has been commissioned for some 11, 12 years, and well, during the pandemic, there were 3-4 years during which it wasn't put to any use at all. And now we're using some $20-30 million in order to refurbish it. Why is it? Is it because of the running down of the repairs and so on? And also, I understand that some of the tenancy agreement would be put out for application and so on. So who would be responsible for this refurbishment works? Would it be on the operators? And next is about the drainage projects. If you look at Appendix 4 on page 21, subhead 704, well, in the past couple of years, we have been very concerned about drainage, flooding, and so on, because during the past couple of years, we had the once in a century torrential downpour. I understand that the government has worked very hard to improve the situation. But then every time when it comes to drainage projects and also catchment projects and so on, it would inevitably involve the digging up of roads and so on. Well, in Tseung Kwan O, there was a drainage system that has to be improved, and there is also a catchment system that has to be improved. So have you looked into that? Can there be coordination and synergy effects achieved when the projects are implemented so that you'll be able to reduce costs? Well, thank you. I'll invite Mr. Lee from the Buildings Department, and then for the drainage issues, I'll invite the drainage department to answer. Well, for the cruise terminal, the refurbishment works involve the overall building. Well, the building was commissioned in 2013 and is a bit run down, and therefore, well, to revive our economy, and therefore we need to refurbish the luggage hall on the ground floor, and also a dozen or so toilets on the second floor, and also the ceiling and the walls and so on, and also the VIP room on the second on level 2, and also the podium garden would also have to be repaved, and also the planters would also have to be refurbished. What about the responsibility? Who should be responsible for the cost of the works? Should it be the government or the operators? Well, the Tourism Commission, well, because of the policy address, and is responsible for promoting cruise economy, and therefore we have been asked to help with the refurbishment. Next, Mr. Lee from the DSD. Yes, there are two questions. First, under head 704, subhead 4100DX, well, in the second part, next year, there are two projects, and item 7 and item 10. Well, item 7, let me explain. Well, in Tseung Kwan O, for the existing rainwater catchment is about the structural integrity and also operational smoothness. So it's an improvement works. And also in Cheung Kwan O, well, there was this box culvert would like to carry out some investigation. It's not an improvement works, so we will carry out the investigation first, and where there is a need, we will carry out improvement works. And the honourable member was also concerned about the traffic situation. Well, in most cases, we would use the pitchless digging, so we would be opening up the drainage covers, and then we would use high-end technology in order to carry out improvement and restoration works in order to minimize the impact on the traffic. Thank you. Next, Mr. Yang Wing Kit. Thank you, Chairman. On the overall funding, I support it, but then I have 3 minor issues that I'd like to follow up. And I think it's like what Mr. Yang just said, is about the refurbishment of the cruise terminal. Well, on the ground floor, where the luggage hall will have to be refurbished, I have no qualms about that, because when visitors come, they will have to come to the luggage claim hall. But then for the other parts, I do have some reservation, because I do go to the cruise terminal from time to time to take a look at the situation. In fact, if you look at the number of people there, it's very well, there are only very few. And also for the podium garden, it's not a problem at all. So is there a genuine need for refurbishment? I do have reservation, unless you can up the utilization rate. So even after the refurbishment, if nobody is going there, then why bother? And therefore, I think that could be delayed. And also on the toilets, that's the same, because unless you tell me that well, on level 2, and also for the VIP room and also the podium garden, the utilization rate has gone up very substantially, then that's by all means you should improve them. But then if the utilization rate is next to 0, then why bother? So we should wait until after the new operator has come in, and also in a policy address, and also in terms of our tourism blueprint. Well, if there are other functions that can be provided, then we should wait until after we have decided on the new functions. Then we will deal with that as an integral part of it. I think that would be a more efficient use of public resources. And on head 707, subhead 7100CX on the East Kowloon Waterfront Promenade, I don't know why you need to consider that, because for the entire East Kowloon Waterfront Promenade, well, it's very clear from Kwun Tong all the way to Charcoal Link is very clearly connected. And why do we have to spend another $20 million to conduct this further study? You will have to justify that. I'm very curious about that. And also, on head 710, subhead 007GX, on the Cheung Kwan O Health Department e-signature system, well, we are not really. Why do we have to have another system to do this signing system? Because the Digital Policy Office has already said that, well, for universities, they can connect to the DPO system, and then you can do it. Why can't we, well, connect it with iSmart, and then we can do it more easily? Well, I'll ask the ASD to answer, and then I'll ask the another office to answer the questions. Well, the second and third question are related to the DPO. Yes, well, this is a newly added item. Well, noting members' comments, I suspect that for the ground level baggage hall, that might be needed. Okay, I'll go back and then I'll take it up with the Tourism Commission and discuss it. Next, Mr. Ma. Thank you, Chairman. I'm also grateful to Mr. Yang for his questions. Well, in fact, the East Kowloon Waterfront Promenade would cover Yau Tong to Kai Tak development area and so on. Well, for the waterfront promenade, and some sections have been connected already, but then there are quite a few sections that have not yet been connected, and therefore, the entire waterfront promenade has not been cut through, and therefore, we will have to improve that, and then we will have to enhance the whole promenade, because without the reclamation approach, we will not be able to do it. But then recently, we have this opportunity that has emerged. Well, under the Protection of Harbour ordinance, we have an amendment that is being tabled, and we hope that we would be making use of that opportunity. We are going to review the sections that have not been connected. So we will see if we can connect them now, taking advantage of that amendment so that the entire waterfront promenade can be connected. Okay, for the health department, please, Mr. Mack from the DPO. Yes, Chairman, I'd like to explain that the Department of Health is now submitting this application for a new project. We have not approved that yet. In fact, according to the information provided so far, was for some of the documents that have been signed, for example, certificate of sick leave and also referrals and so on. Yes, they have a software. They have a software template requiring the menu signature in order to hand it back to the patient so that they can then take it back to their office or to the relevant authorities and so on. And you're talking about making use of the IM Smart apps for the signature, and then they'd be able to be shown on eHealth. Well, when we scrutinize the project, we will have to take a serious look as to whether or not it's necessary and does that exactly require that much money. So we will take a second look. Thank you. Well, for the East Kowloon promenade, I would support it after listening to the explanation. But then looking at the paper, well, for the Health Bureau, you're going to introduce this eHealth Plus, and that function is already incorporated. Why bother to have this additional system so that they can bring it back to their company? In fact, under eHealth, you can already deal with that. So I'd like to urge you to really be very careful when it comes to gatekeeping. Yes, you should be acting as the gatekeeper. Next, Mr. Lee Chun Kyung. Thank you. Well, another $40 billion is being applied for, and as CFC, we have to be very prudent when it comes to funding approval. You should only use public money where it is necessary, and you would also have to set priorities. Those that are urgently needed would be approved, but then there are also projects that are not that urgent, and therefore we would have reservation about this. So I have a few questions for the department on head 608. Well, many of these have to do with refurbishment works for schools and also elevator enhancements and so on. So if you were to reduce that by about $229 million, so the remaining amount is about $100 million. So you still have no idea as to how many students can be admitted this year, and therefore on the school refurbishment works and also for the lifts and so on, that might not be needed in the end. And also about the DPO. Well, the Education Bureau is going to open up a platform for registration for managers and so on. You're going to spend about $7 million. And if you look at the Form 6 under the Education Bureau, you've already got a PDF and also online form for people to register. And as far as I understand it, that has already been included under IM Smart, and therefore they can fill out the form there. So why do you have to have another system spending $7 million on that? And the second question is that some 9,000 people's registration will be affected. So are they all new managers? If they are not, then why do they have to repeatedly register? And you might say that all they need to do is to fill out a form to certify that there is no criminal record on their part and so on. Well, it's a very simple thing. All you need to do is to have a Google form, because all you're required to fill in is very simple particulars. And why do you have to spend $7 million? So what is the cost for that? Is it necessary? And in fact, for the PDF files and also for the online forms, you have already included that in the IM Smart. Why do you need to introduce another system for that? What are the things that you need to upgrade? Okay, I'll ask Mr. Fan from the DPO to answer. Thank you, Chairman. Well, in enclosure 8, you have some lift and elevators upgrading project, well, in 2018 and 19, and also in the 2018 policy address, some $2 billion will be set aside, and a dedicated team will also be set up to expedite the installation of elevators and so on in order to introduce barrier-free campuses and so on. Most of these schools still have yet to install elevators and so on, and therefore for such major improvement works to be introduced, we would also try to find out the student enrollment situation, and these schools have been looked at and they have no problems whatsoever with regard to student enrollment. They would not be closed within the near term, and therefore when we undertake major infrastructure projects, we will have to find out the enrollment situation, and if indeed there is an enrollment problem, then we would try to suspend the project for the time being. Yes, what about the manager registration platform? So can you provide the details next time? Because let's say if you're talking about 6 stories, and then if they were to reduce the number of classes, they would only need 3 stories. And in those cases, they would no longer need a lift or elevator, right? So if they are not necessary, then you can also spend more stringently. Yes, indeed, we have done that in the past. When we undertook such projects, we noticed that the enrollment situation was not satisfactory, and therefore we had suspended some of those projects.
Mr. Mack, this is the second time that a member asked about this platform. Please be succinct. This is just not a e-form platform. It is connected to IM Smart. This will be part of this project, that is to connect it with IM Smart, that there will be e-signature function as well. In the past, we relied on the manual procedure. When an application form was received and the school confirmed that the form had been submitted, the Education Bureau would have to have a lot of staff vetting the application to see if the relevant requirements are met and whether the constitution of the relevant management committee had been complied with. And because of all these issues, we have this e-platform to help vet the applications and streamline the procedures. Yes, Mr. Michael Lee, we already have IM Smart. Why do you need another IM Smart function? Mr. Mack? Even after the form is filled out, it is just a single form. A lot of vetting work will have to be carried out after a form is submitted. For example, the Education Bureau would have to look at the number of members on the management committee, and also every time there is a new application from the same management committee, the vetting procedure would have to be done again. In the past, we relied on staff to do it. And as mentioned, there are about 9,000 such applications every year according to the statistics from the Education Bureau, of which 2,000 are new applications and 3,000 are renewal and 4,000 are cancellation of registration. You can imagine that when a registration is cancelled, the management committee or the Education Bureau will have to look for a new member to take up the manager post at the management committee. And the current practice really is wasting a lot of resources. Mr. Rock Chen, I would like to ask about Head 710 A007GX about computerization plan. I see that there is an increase of 8% of expenditure compared to last year under this head. With the tight fiscal position, what are the reasons behind the significant increase in expenditure? Also, we know that DeepSeek brings a lot of surprises and shocks to the world. This is because the cost is very low. With the computerization plan of the government, is the administration considering using DeepSeek or other AI technologies to help save costs? Thank you. I believe Mr. Mack again will take up this question. We have a fourth member asking about the computerization item. In relation to the 8% of increase in expenditure, of the 25 sum allocation, 80% of them is for cash flow. It is a huge amount of money. For the rest of the 20%, it is reserved for about 331 new projects, and this is the ceiling. We know that by using technologies to enhance efficiency, it is a major trend. While the government is facing a tight fiscal position, we don't want to put everything on hold. We are actually reserving a small amount of money for this item compared to last year. We don't want to cut our investments for the future, and we don't want to stop enhancing our quality of services as well as work efficiency because of the tight financial position. In relation to the point about DeepSeek, we've been encouraging different government departments to use technologies such as AI technologies to enhance the work efficiency. The emergence of DeepSeek allows us to reflect on this. There is a new AI generative technology center in Hong Kong, and it has helped us develop a software that is similar to DeepSeek, and it is now being tested out by the different government departments. So we are now thinking whether we can use DeepSeek directly, or can we modify it and adopt it within the government. We have to enhance productivity by using these technologies so that we can save money. This should be the ultimate purpose. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chen. Mr. Chao Xiu-chung, we're facing a serious deficit problem in Hong Kong. For works projects that are urgent as well as linked to people's livelihood, they are necessary. So I support this funding proposal. I have the following questions. The first concerns Head 703, Subhead 3004GX about refurbishment of public toilets. According to the government, refurbishment is different from upgrading works. It has to do with drainage works as well as a change of layout. Enhancement works, on the other hand, concerns simpler works about replacing some old facilities. I want to ask about the public toilet projects in Shenzhen, as well as in other new territories region. They in total cost about $5 million. So I want to know why the government has to spend so much money on the public toilet refurbishment works. My other question concerns Head 3101 GX. Again, this is a public toilet enhancement work. And the project estimate ranges from $13 million to $16 million. And the cost of it is higher than the reprovisioning works of public toilet. The reprovisioning work in Chao Kei Wan just cost about $9 million. Reprovisioning work should be more expensive, right? So in total, all these public toilet projects would cost millions, tens of millions of dollars. Head 706, Subhead 6100TX. It's about an interchange project. The bus interchange at Aberdeen Tunnel will cost about $40 million. The one at Tate Can Tunnel will cost about $50 million. How come there is such a difference? Also, paragraph 37 of the paper mentions that there will be works concerning cycling tracks, and the project estimate is about $35 million. With such a tight fiscal position, how do you assess the urgency of this project? Is there a need for the government to implement this project? I ask the Mr. Lee from RHSD first to reply to this question. For subhead 3004 under head 703, it is a refurbishment works. We do not dismantle the toilet, we just refurbish them. We, for example, upgrade the toilet cubicles. For 3004, we dismantle the entire public toilet and we build the public toilet from scratch, including the roof of the public toilet. You mentioned that some project cost $5 million to $6 million. And these public toilets are about 40 to 55 square meters large. For those that cost about $5 to $6 million, the tender price was released in about 2018 and 2017. And for the projects that cost about $13 to $16 million, they are in a much larger size of about 300 to 600 square meters. For the more expensive projects, the tender documents were only published recently. That's why the return tender price is different. So we're talking about two types of projects. In one type, we dismantle the entire public toilet. For the other types, we just refurbish the public toilet. Highways Department, Mr. Ng. I thank the member for the questions. On bus interchange, there will be one at Aberdeen Tunnel and the other one at Tate Can Tunnel. There is the difference in terms of the cost because the one at Aberdeen Tunnel is much shorter and the one at Tate Can is longer. And there are two sides to the tunnel, each side about 100 meters long. And for the one at Tate Can Tunnel, on one side it will be 170 meters long, the other side 125 meters. Also, the member asked about the cycling track, as well as bike parking spaces. Well, some members of the public think that there is a lack of bike parking spaces. That's why there are views that we should introduce new parking spaces for bicycles. We will try to strike a balance because we are aware of the tight financial position of the government, and also we do not want to affect the traffic condition with the new parking spaces. We will consult the district councillors as well as the relevant stakeholders on this. Mr. Chan Kin-po. Capital Reserve Works Reserve Fund is mainly used on projects close to people's livelihood. I think this funding proposal deserves our support. However, with a fiscal deficit, the government has to cut back on expenditure. Just now, there was mentioned that the government will make sure that the projects adhere to the no-frills principle as well as commit resources as and when justified. The government will also assess the priorities of different projects. I think this is a good direction. As the government assessed the difference in terms of the estimate of the projects before and after it makes the assessment. Also, will you ask the different departments to pay special attention to these projects? Have you flagged any projects where you think cost could be saved? And are all government departments, do all government departments align with this? Secretary, perhaps this is a question for you. There are two aspects to this. First, government departments, they would assess whether there's room to make improvement for each particular project. Also, for projects that is category D projects that cost about $30 to $50 million, they would try to cut back on expenditure. I will defer to the Development Bureau.
Well, for the items in that subhead, well, it ranges from $30 million to $50 million, and within that range, the project strategy and control office would have a role to play. So, for example, if there is a project being submitted and before the controlling officer approves that project, it would be submitted to us as a third party to take a look at the estimates and whether or not such estimates are reasonable and so on. So there would also be benchmark comparison and so on. And we would see if that project is in line with the comparable projects that have been done before. And our experience is that a majority of these projects, well, there are some major categories. For example, some are standardized projects that have been implemented many times before. And for such projects, there would not be major fluctuation when it comes to the pricing. And therefore, the prices or the estimates would be more or less the same as before. And then there are special projects in response to certain needs. Say there might have been requests from the community for the department to conduct such projects, and they would be more specific, and they would not be like the more regular projects, and therefore we would then give them our advice. And also in the past, majority of these projects would have to go through this tendering process, so they have already received the bids before submitting them to us. Well, on our part, we don't have such records with me now, but then if you look at the bidding prices that they received, well, when they received bids, very often they would also achieve some savings because there was competition. And I suspect that they will also make use of the existing mechanisms and procurement approaches in order to reduce costs. So I think that's all I can say for the time being. And also, what's the best approach in terms of money saving? So have you considered that, and have you shared that with departments? Have you asked them to follow those best practices? Yes, we do encourage that. And actually, within the Development Bureau in the last year, we have also conducted some studies on cost effectiveness. We have also looked at how we can reduce construction costs, and there are several directions that we plan to take. Amongst them, we would like to enhance the procurement methodology. We would also review the standards adopted, and also we would like to streamline the scrutiny workflow. So these are the main directions that we will take. So that would not just apply to Cat A projects. For minor projects, we would also be applying the same principles, so that even for minor projects, we will be applying the same principles in undertaking those projects. Next up, Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you. Well, under 100ZX of 710, item 8 is about the fourth cross-harbor road from Lantau to Khao Yi Chau Artificial Island. And given the tight budget, the administration might be deferring that project indefinitely. But then there is no timetable. But then for many people, they'd be moving into northwestern and northeastern part of Hong Shui Kiu, and therefore the West Kowloon Harbour crossing would be very congested. And with the additional population, with major connecting roads and mass transit systems, there would also be serious problems. And therefore, I've been asking the administration that before 2038, there should be a direct link from Tuen Mun to the Hong Kong Island so that there can be a new cross-harbour railway. And the administration also said that by 2038, they should be able to complete it. Now that you're going to postpone the construction of the artificial island, you still have to deal with these two infrastructure projects. So my question is, well, for the railway, is about Island A to Island C, and you're going to build that. If the artificial island project is to be postponed, then can you do this? Can you go ahead with these two veins first? Because I suspect that there is no need for reclamation, and all you need to do is to build these railways with the bridge towers built on the seabed. So what is the progress so far? Can you tell us more about that, Mr. Ma? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Michael Tian, for your question. Well, let me respond and supplement. Well, on the Khao Yi Chau artificial island, we would be reviewing the situation. We will be setting priorities, and there are critical and essential works. They will have to be pressed ahead first. We have not paused on that project and we are actually looking at the market situation before deciding on how we should press ahead with that. And there are several projects that are going forward in tandem. So there is no question of suspending the project whatsoever. And then for the, we will have to wait until the third year before we would decide on the fourth cross-harbour tunnel. And we're actually doing some preparatory stage study. So we're doing some advanced studies before we decide on the next stage of work. We will have to make use of market forces to see how we can press ahead with that project. And of course, for the fourth cross-harbour crossing, we are also looking at the financial arrangements, and there is some internal discussion right now. So later on, once we have more concrete information, we will report back. So is it positive? Because you're not even asking for money for conducting the study. My question is, what is that study about? So for the two veins that you're going to build, well, with the artificial island reclaimed, and of course that can be added. But then my question is, I'd like you to tell me, because you have no idea as to when you're going to refill or build the artificial island. And without the artificial island, then are you going to say that well, the cross-harbour railway will be commissioned in 2038, then you will have to build the bridge tower first on the seabed, or else how can you build that railway to Lantau? Because you need to have some connecting roads in between, right? So you will have to build the base first. So are you going to conduct a study on that first? Yes, thank you for your question, Mr. Tian. Well, your concern will have to be dealt with by, well, it's about from the connection from Tuen Mun to Hong Kong Island. So assuming that the artificial island is not going to go ahead, so I don't have the information with me after the meeting. I'll have to contact the relevant department before I get back to you. Yes, you will have to conduct a study anyway. Do you understand that? Yes, I'm sure he understands that. Next, Mr. Lok Chung Hong. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on Head 703, Subhead 3004GX, some new construction projects. I'd like to declare that I support the work of the police force very much. The reason why I'm asking questions on these two projects, well, the amount is not that significant, but then I'm sure the public would understand this. It's about the refurbishment of the Tin Shui Wai police station's reporting room, and also the Mount Shan police station's reporting room. So that would cost some $27.58 million and $26.7 million respectively. Well, last time I already asked the question, but then the answer given to me by the relevant departments were very sloppy, because they said that well, the size of the rooms were very small, just a few 100 square meters, and the cost would be comparable to previous estimates. But then we have a tight budget right now, and therefore you will have to make savings wherever possible. So you will have to give us more details. So you will have to tell me, for this particular reporting room, how many police officers will be working there, and then does it involve replacing all the computers, and how many tables and chairs are involved, and what materials will be used for the refurbishment. And I don't know, would it be very special because you're concerned that there might be rioters coming in? So you will have to spend some $28 million to refurbish a reporting room. You will have to tell us more about that to justify that. Are there cheaper versions? And even if we approve the budget today, then when it comes to tendering, will you be able to try your best to suppress our costs? I think our police have been doing very well. They have been very well at tackling crimes, and so does it mean that we have to have a very modern reporting room before the public would have good reviews about the police performance? And also the FTU has been submitting a macroscopic suggestion when it comes to the budget. Well, for any project costing less than $50 million, that would be subject to delegated authority, and then for anything costing more, you will have to come to this council for discussion. So that's the rule adopted during the last term, because during the previous terms we had the opposition camp and also the Burn With You camp here, and therefore it's very problematic. And now we have the patriotics running Hong Kong, and therefore we should restore that threshold to $30 million so that this council would be able to act as a gatekeeper when it comes to public works projects, so that we'd be able to seriously scrutinize these projects, and then the departments would also have better motivation to make savings. All right, for the reporting room costing more than $20 million, can you explain a bit further on that? And also on the $30 million, $50 million threshold, I think that's a policy issue. But then given the fact that you have raised it, I think if the Policy Bureau Director is able to answer that question, you can try. But then I'd like to remind you that that is a policy issue, and that should not be discussed here. Okay, I would ask Mr. Lee from the Buildings Department to answer your question, or from the Architectural Services Department. And also for the threshold of $50 million or $30 million, well, they have taken into account inflation and also flexibility to the departments. And if new circumstances arise, we will go back and think about it. And are we going to have the answer from the ASD's director? Yes. Well, for the Tin Shui Wai Police Station and also the Man Shan Police Station, the reporting rooms will be refurbished. In fact, we have adopted the modern day standards so that there would be multiple improvements. For example, there would also be fencing, and there would also be a light queuing system, and there would also be phone system, so that I would be able to serve those online. And also that would also enhance security and also privacy protection, and that would also streamline the procedures, and mostly would be refurbishing the interior decoration, the walls, and also the ceiling, and also the reporting system, and also the building services, including electrical system and also the lighting system, as well as the air conditioning, and there would also be a temporary or provisional reporting room. And you asked about the number of police officers who will be working there. Well, for each reporting room, the size would be about 800 square meters. I have no idea as to how many police officers will be working there. Well, can you provide the details later? Yes, you can submit the details after the meeting. You can also submit those to Mr. Luk Chung Hong. Next, Mr. William Wong. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Well, PWSC paper 17. Well, in the enclosure 10, you have many projects in excess of $10 million, one of which I notice is from the AFCD. You will have to develop an animal welfare case information system, and you need $10.6 million. And I personally think that is a bit too costly. So can you tell us, well, in designing this project, well, has the Bureau considered using some open source system? And also, have you considered using some software reuse mechanism or system? Because I understand that the government has been doing that for many softwares. And if you're able to reuse some of the softwares, then that would also reduce the development time, and also the application cost would also be saved. And also, in the paper, you still use the term computerization program. Well, have you considered using the term digitalization or even AI systems instead? Okay, 2 questions about animal welfare support system. So can you justify why it costs more than $10 million? Well, for computerization system, you should also use a different term because we're talking about AI all the time now.
Secretary, these questions concern Enclosure 10. Perhaps I'll ask Mr. Mack from the DPO to address the questions. I thank Professor Wong for the questions. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Animal Welfare Case Information System. It is a new project to be approved by our office. After we examine the project, we might not approve it, or we might lower the project estimate. This information system will empower the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance will be amended, and under the amendment bill, the SPCA would be empowered to issue a fixed penalty ticket. And this information system can prevent the SPCA from issuing fixed penalty tickets in a redundant manner. So we advise the relevant department to develop the system, and as we vet the project, we would reflect our suggestions to the relevant department. Also, we appoint staff from the DPO to talk to the relevant department, and we would ask the department that even if the system is approved, it would have to follow some of our instructions. As for the naming of the head, well, this name has been used for many years. We will think about it seriously, whether there is a need to rename the head. Yes, Professor Wong. Yes, the DPO was restructured from OGCIO, so I hope the administration would seriously consider renaming the head. I guess the wording digitalization or AI would fit more with the trend. Mr. Benson, look, thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask about country park facilities under Head 705, Subhead 501DX. I have 2 sets of questions about this. First, about public toilet. I've looked at information about public toilets in country parks. I see from the project description that there will be projects at Pat Sin Lane Country Park as well as Tai Tam Country Park, and the design of the public toilets are rather old. And in one of the campsites, there are only 2 dry toilets there at Long Kea Wan. So I think there is a need for the administration to upgrade these public toilets, especially because we've been promoting the idea of tourism is everywhere, and that we have been promoting our country parks. In relation to reconstruction of public toilets, the public toilet at Long Kea Wan, it's rather expensive. Can the administration explain why? Is it because Long Kei Wan is relatively more remote. Another question is about recommended or proposed new projects. A number of these projects stem from the consultancy report of the AFCD in 2017 about upgrading country park facilities. I am concerned about the camping facilities at Tai Tong barbecue area within Tai Lam Country Park. The project estimate is $26.5 million. I looked up information about this. I believe there should be 25 to 35 campsites there. So, for each campsite is about $1 million, which amounts to the cost of building one public rental housing unit. What facilities will there be at the campsite? And will there be fee charging facilities there? Of course, it would be great if the campsite could break even. Otherwise, what would be the estimated recurrent expenditure for this campsite? I'll invite Dr. Ip from the AFCD to address the questions. Dr. Ip, please. Mr. Benson Luke asked two sets of questions. First, about public toilets. He mentioned about the public toilet project at Long Kei Wan. It is being carried out now. There is great scenery at Long Kei Wan. It is on the McLehose Trail. It's very popular among hikers. The campsite itself is also very popular. However, there are no vehicle accesses that lead to the country park. There are no piers there as well. So it is very difficult to build a public toilet there. While we encounter many difficulties and challenges, we do see the actual need to build a new public toilet there. So for this new public toilet, we have been working with the Arch SD. We will use new facilities. For example, the two existing dry toilets, there will be 7 cubicles in total, which is a great increase. Also, we will adopt simple design to facilitate future maintenance works. There are no sewage facilities there, so sewage works will have to be carried out locally. So because of the special sewage treatment, the cost is high. Mr. Benson Luke asked about the design of the campsite in Tai Tong. It is currently a barbecue area, and we propose to renovate it into a new campsite. There will be a deck. We will design it into a very comfortable site. We'll also enhance the services there. For example, there will be booking services. There will be a kiosk to offer rental service. We will also accommodate wheelchair users with new facilities there. We will offer education service as well as docent tours. So it is going to be a significant upgrade compared to the existing facilities. We're in talks with the relevant departments to see if we can adjust the budget. But because it is rather remote, so again the cost would be high. Mr. Benson Luke asked about whether there will be fee charging facilities. While we're going to significantly enhance our services, we believe there will be fee charging services and facilities. We are looking at the mode of operation as well as the service fees to be charged now in the future. Some members suggested the administration lowering the budget. I hope the administration would work towards this direction and try as much as possible to compress the costs of different projects to heed the views of members. Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chairman. The CWRF block allocations for the year 2025 to 26 will be $41 billion, and for 2026 2023, it was about some $40 billion as well. So in general, the block allocation of $41 billion is a huge sum of money, and with a dire financial situation of the government, I think it deserves our careful attention to each of these items and projects. These projects cover a lot of different districts and areas, and these projects are closely linked to people's livelihood, so I think these projects deserve our support. I have a couple of questions first about land acquisition. It involves different projects in the northern metropolis. For example, the Shantin Technopole project, Hongshui-Q Development Area Phase 2, and so on. Each of these projects would exceed $10 billion. We are seeing a weak stock market. Will the government lower the cost accordingly on land resumption? On consultancy fees for minor works, some of the consultancy fees would cost $30 million. Can you explain whether it's possible to compress the cost and whether it is feasible for you to work out a plan with the contractors to lower the cost? Thirdly, about reprovisioning works. A lot of these reprovisioning projects would cost some $40 to $50 million. Are these reprovisioning works necessary? Are they urgent? Would the government consider whether it's possible for it to lower the cost of the works? So the questions concerned land resumption and whether there is room to compress cost. I'll defer to the Lands Department on the question about land resumption. On land or site investigation works that concern CCED as well as ArchSD. ArchSD? Okay, Lands Department first. For compensation that we have to pay in relation to land resumption, they are statutory compensation, and we have to give out ex gratia allowance, and the way of calculating it, we follow the formula approved by the Finance Committee, so it's hard for us to adjust the formula or way of calculation. I believe the Development Bureau as well as the relevant Works Department have been trying hard to adjust the works programs for different projects to ensure a stable cash flow. On site investigation works, yes, CEDD. On site investigation as well as consultancy fees, before we commence each project, we have to investigate the site as well as collect soil sample. We have to have enough information in order to release the tender documents to make sure that we have a good project estimate included in the tender documents, and we try to secure the best tender price. As for consultancy fees, again, there is an established procedure, which is a fair and open procedure to select the most desirable consultant to undertake the project. On reprovisioning works, the member said that each project might cost $40 to $50 million. We have a project under the subhead 30024 GX, and this is refurbishment for old buildings, and we stick to the no frills principle. As for improvement works, it is really based on the public's need. For example, we have to refurbish the public toilets by building a new toilet from scratch. For example, we also improve play facilities based on the needs of the public. Again, we stick to the no-frills principle, and we hope that we can address the needs of the public through these projects. Yes. CEDD. On consultancy fees, when we hold the tendering process, we wait for the return tender price, and based on the return tender price, we approve the project. So we are very stringent about the cost.
Ms. Lam So White, thank you. Well, with regard to the block allocation for CWRF, you're asking for some $41.6 billion. In fact, when it was discussed at the PWSC, I was concerned about several projects, including the water sports center in Area 77 of Cheung Kwan O. Well, investigation would cost some $11.58 million. And last time, they didn't give us a very clear answer. So that has been put on the shelf for 13 years, and yet nothing has been done. There is no timeline whatsoever. So when will it be completed? Given the very stringent financial situation that we are in today, well, how can we be accountable to the public? That's something that I'm also very concerned about. So the administration has the administration consider whether or not it's necessary, and also for the refurbishment of the reporting rooms in Cheung Kwan O and also Ma'an Shan police stations. Is it necessary? Even if the reporting rooms are not refurbished, well, what kind of impact will that have on the public? You're going to spend some $5 million each for these reporting rooms. So what new functions will be introduced? What new technology will be introduced? I want them to give us an answer. Well, some of the projects are not urgently needed. Why can't we put them aside for the time being? And then on the other hand, the administration is cutting welfare and also healthcare spending. So being members and also directly elected members, how can we be accountable to our voters? So two questions. One is about the water sports center in Cheung Kwan O. Another is about the refurbishment of the reporting rooms in Cheung Kwan O and Ma'an Shan. So some of the members have asked that question already. So can the ASD answer those questions? Well, for the Area 77 Cheung Kwan O Water Sports Center, we have already completed the technology assessment report, and now we are doing some investigations, and we will have to wait till after that has been completed before we press ahead with further plans. In fact, last time at the PWSC, I already mentioned that there are two parts to this because, we will have to build sea walls and so on because it's at the seaside, and also we will then be able to build a superstructure. And we are now talking to the relevant department about this because initially, last time we already said that we will have to first build a sea wall, and also, that would be the responsibility of the Marine Department, and then we will discuss how we can enhance it so that we can roll that out or commission that as soon as possible. We haven't got the timetable yet. So that's for the water sports center in Cheung Kwan O Area 77. On the police stations reporting rooms, two police stations are involved. They were completed and commissioned in 1993. So that applies to both. And then we need to have a new generation reporting room because for the counters for reporting, there will be partitioning walls, and there would also be self-help kiosks, so that for the ethnic minority groups, they will still be able to report cases, and that would also enhance privacy protection, and that would also enhance the efficiency of work. In fact, you're talking about an 800 square meter reporting room. We have to refurbish it in order to add those functions. Chairman, even without the refurbishment, does that mean that members of the public are not able to report crimes? So that's my question. Yes, members would like to know whether or not it's a pressing project, and are there alternative ways of doing that? Well, as I said, the building was commissioned in 1993. It's been some time ago. And as I answered the questions earlier, well, normally we would only consider that 5 or 10 years afterwards. And now we're talking about a building which is 20, 30 years old, and therefore it's about time that we refurbish it so that we can adopt the latest modern day standards. Next, Ms. Wendy Hong, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Well, colleagues have asked many specific issues. I'd like to ask an overall question about the overall construction cost. In Hong Kong, the construction cost is about 5 to 10 times that of Shenzhen. One has to do with the system because basically our standards are very stringent and the approval procedures are very cumbersome, and also that has to do with civil servants, and they like to have zero risk, and they are very rigid, and they have no idea as to when, how much time that would take, and how long it would take for things to be completed. And well, that's hard to accept. In fact, very often the designer would also have to be more open, and sometimes they would not be prepared to take any risks, and therefore very often when it comes to building safety, we have to adopt a safety standard that is in excess of 100%. And according to the construction sector, a lot of the time will be spent on scrutiny instead of the actual undertaking of the work. So have you ever considered why we are a lot more costly than that a lot more costly than Shenzhen? Are there any ways to improve or reform the system? Yes, I'll defer to the Development Bureau colleague to answer the question. Yes, thank you for your questions. On the situations referred to by the honorable member, actually the administration has been looking into that during the past year. We have conducted a very serious review into that. I think by the end of the year before last, we already started a strategic study on Hong Kong's construction cost, and last year, by the end of last year, that is 2024, we already completed that study. And under a cost effectiveness group under the Public Works or the PWSC, we already reported the findings. Well, let me disclose some of the findings. In fact, for what Ms. Wendy Hong just said, I agree to part of it. And there are 4 major directions that we are taking. So the procurement methodology, and also the review of the reviewing standards, and also the adoption of latest technology, and also how we can streamline the scrutiny procedures. So we'll be looking in those 4 directions in order to reduce costs for the construction sector. You talk about the standards that we have adopted. I agree that many of the new proposals or technologies that have never been used in Hong Kong before, how can they be introduced into Hong Kong? Well, we have taken a very serious look into that. And why have it been so difficult to adopt those technologies? Or why has it been so difficult? Well, last year in August, the Development Office has also set up a Construction Technology Research Institute, and that's a wholly owned company by the government, and we would be looking at innovative materials and also construction methods and so on. We try to enhance our construction standards, and we would also be conducting testing as well as certification. So those are focused on what Ms. Hong has observed. Those are the issues or challenges faced by the construction sector. So as I said, these are the directions that we are taking so that we would try to save costs as far as possible for the construction sector. Thank you. Okay. I think colleagues have all expressed a wish that wherever possible you should reduce costs. And if you're able to tell us exactly what you're going to do to reduce costs, that would be the best, because we'd like to see the effect of cost cutting. And I think that is what the public would like to see as well. Next, Ms. Jovi Chen. Thank you, Deputy Chairman. Well, I'm grateful to the departments for providing additional information to the questions that we asked at the PWSC. PWSC 2019, well, I can see that for the CWRF had a 710 computerization program, it will see an 18.3% rise. But then the paper has only given us the heading without the details. We don't know the nature of the projects or whether or not they are urgently needed. So my question is about Head 710. What we can see is there are 4 subcategories of projects, and for the new projects, most of them are classified under Cat 1, that is digitalization, and second is about efficiency enhancement, and third is about technology upgrading, and fourth is about security, and they are not that urgent. So can the departments refresh us with that? And also, in the supplementary paper, out of the 20 projects, they'd be able to reduce that by some $8.2 million, and you'll be able to reduce $18 million for the year. So that's under recurrent expenditure. So if you look at the figure itself, for 20 projects, well, added together, well, they will cost several times the savings. So that's not very cost effective in my view. And well, the DPO will be there to act as a gatekeeper, and they'll check whether or not the sum is justified. So how can you be sure? So can the departments give us more details? Thank you. Okay, on the computerization program, so are they urgent? And also, looking at all the projects, the amount of savings, can you justify that and give us more details? So I'll ask the DPO to answer that. Yes, thank you, Madam Chen, for your questions. In fact, if you look at the table, there are many projects. We are talking about over 1,125 projects, and 784 ongoing projects, and 331 are new projects. So given the huge number, we have only highlighted 20 in the table. In fact, if you look at the distribution, as mentioned before, well, many of them fall under the first category, that is digital government. One of the reasons being that in the past couple of years, well, the DPO has put in place this new strategy to promote the development of digital government, and therefore we would ask the government departments to use the I Am Smart to provide convenience to the public. So that's a policy requirement. And for some departments, they would also like to upgrade the existing system, and they would also like to refresh the systems. Very often, well, the system might have been in use for some time, and some of the softwares might already reach a stage whereby they have to be replaced, or else they cannot be upgraded any further. And as a result, the stability of the system and also the security of the system might be compromised. And also, when it comes to efficiency, quite a number of departments have also proposed such projects. But then in this regard, well, in scrutinizing new projects applications, because of the financial situation, we would be more stringent in looking at the cost effectiveness of the projects before we would be prepared to single them out for approval. So the major categories that have been set out, well, for new projects, we would review that again. And internally, even for ongoing projects, when it comes to cash flows, because of the current situation, which is very tight, we will have to ask the departments for further information. What is the current situation? Do you have to settle the bills, for example, before we would be prepared to release the money to them? And you also mentioned the amount of savings, for example, the manpower that has been cut, and also have we been able to achieve some savings in terms of cost and so on. Well, for those 20 items that we have singled out, 10 are new projects, and they have only submitted some initial estimates. And moving on, we will be asking them very strictly as to what kind of effect they can achieve, and if the effect is not good, then there is a high likelihood that we would not approve them after all. Next, Mr. Carmen Khan. Thank you, Chairman. We are scrutinizing the funding requests for CWRF block allocations. So we are actually giving this delegated authority so that that would reduce the time that would be needed for scrutinizing and approving these projects. And you said that it's practical and effective, and that would also save a lot of time for the FC so that we would use our time more usefully. Well, I've also reviewed the situation for the past few years. Well, at the time, you apply for some $50.6 billion, but then for the actual approved amount, that's $41 billion. So it's about 82% of the requested amount. So are you suggesting that you're applying for $41 billion, and then are you actually asking for some so would there be a cut by sub 16%? Because when it comes to land acquisition, I have the following observation. Because last year you suggested $34 billion, but then in fact you only used $24.8 billion, and this year the amount should be $24.8 billion, but then at the PWSC, that would only account for some 70% of the total amount spent. If you look at the previous years, so from the Green Book, you can see that well, in terms of land acquisition, you have set aside some $9.9 billion, but then in fact we have only used $5.5 billion. So that's 55% of the applied amount. Does that mean that in terms of the progress of land acquisition, we are moving more slowly than planned? So how should we plan our progress? And also you're talking about enhancing the speed and also enhancing or increasing the quantity. So you're actually having meetings to see how we can expedite everything. So whatever is needed, whether if we need to legislate, then we'll go ahead with that. And you'd like to streamline the procedures. So when it comes to land acquisition, how are you going to improve it? And also the project management or control office or the PSGO. You said that when it comes to monitoring these consultants and so on, there is room for improvement. So do we have to see that only in Cat A projects when it comes to the PSGO's work? If we were to give you the block approval, so that you would be given this lump sum, would you be able to play your role or discharge your duties as the PSGO?
A series of questions about the monitoring of efficiency and effectiveness of projects, and for the money that was not spent, how would you make use of it? I'll defer to the Development Bureau on land acquisition. We adjust the timeline based on the actual needs and operation. And we only commence the works after we have kick-started the statutory procedure for Kongshui Q New Development Area Phase 2, as well as Kutong North and Fanling North. In relation to the land acquisition timetable, there's been adjustment. So for year 2024 to 25, there was corresponding adjustment. We also have to vet the eligibility as well as the checking of land titles, as well as whether the landowner would accept the compensation and ex gratia allowance. Yes, Ms. Carmen Khan, I think the administration should not just give a general answer in relation to listing out the challenges that it faces. It mentioned about the progress of different works. I wonder if the process can be streamlined, as well as for the statutory procedure. Could the process be streamlined through legislation? If the development process is 30 to 45% slower than expected, and you still use the approved allocation of $24.8 billion, well, would you actually did you actually end up using all the approved allocation? Well, the allocation was approved, but it doesn't mean that the funding was spent. Secretary, on the first question asked by Ms. Carmen Khan about how we control the expenditure in a macro manner, the figure $24.8 billion was brought up, and this was the approved allocation last year. If you look at the yearly situation, well, of course, every year we ask for a funding allocation, and this year we asked for a total of $41.6 billion. Of course, when the actual expenditure is less, we would report it to the LegCo. So at the beginning, we draft a project estimate and we look at whether the project estimate is reasonable. And during the process, during the implementation of different projects, there is a dedicated team under the Development Bureau that help monitor the cost of the projects for those that are costing $30 to $50 million. When there is a huge difference between the project estimate or the actual expenditure, we would make a report to the Legislative Council. Perhaps the administration should provide a written reply to Ms. Carmen Khan. Mr. Sunny Tang. Thank you, Chairman. I have a question about Head 710, computerization. I speak in support of the overall funding proposal. I want to ask about the procurement process as well as the implementation procedure. A lot of times I was told that the government, when it comes to buying computers, it takes a long time. So by the time the users get the computer would become an old model. Are there ways to streamline the procurement procedure so that by the time when the user departments get the computers would not become an old model? And how can you make sure that the computers, when delivered to the relevant departments, they would still be the late model? My other question is for the DPO. I hope the DPO could initiate more cross-departmental efforts and liaison so that we can see the building of a digital or smart government, and that we can see streamlined procedures as well as sharing of data. This is in line with the idea of I Am Smart. For the corporate versions as well as the public version of I Am Smart, we have to take into consideration the long-term planning and development. The first question is about the procurement of computers. The second question is about the sharing of data across different government departments. I'll invite Mr. Donald Mack from the DPO to address the questions. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Mr. Chen for the questions. His first question is about the procurement procedure. For many years, we arrange for procurement contracts for hardware and software procurement. Say certain departments might need IT facilities or servers, and through a streamlined procedure, within a few weeks' time, the department would get a quotation. Normally, the model that the department concerned would get would be the latest model. For large-scale works projects, the relevant department may have to initiate a tendering exercise, which would cost a longer time. from when a contractor bids the project and the department gets the returned tender price, I believe the time wouldn't be so long that the model the department receives would become an old one. For the past 2 to 3 years, the DPO has developed a lot of infrastructure facilities. We introduced in a subcommittee about the structure of the DPO or the IT system. We have the cloud system as well as a shared platform. For the sharing of data, we have built an authorized data consent exchange. To share data, we need the authorization from the relevant department because of the personal data ordinance. In fact, some data have been shared across different departments. We hope that through I Am Smart, as well as the corporate I Am Smart platform, for which we got the funding approval from the Finance Committee last year, we would be able to share data across different government departments. We also have the consented data exchange gateway. The I Am Smart will feature some new functions. In this quarter, if you give a consent, you will be able to see the balance of your water bill account on I Am Smart. So this is going to be a one-stop customized platform. Dr. So Chun Wing. Thank you, Chairman. I support the funding proposal to enhance the government's efficiency. According to the paper, 2 non-works-related programs will be incorporated, including land acquisition as well as computerization into this block allocations. However, I'm quite confused. It is clear to me how much money it's going to cost for land acquisition. However, in relation to the progress of the projects, as well as the cost effectiveness of the projects, it's not clear. On land acquisition, it's hard for us to have an idea of the progress of the projects. The market is not looking good now. The government is considering whether to sell land or whether it should wait until later to sell its land. And because of a drop of land sales, we see that the government is suffering in terms of its revenue from land premium. Has the government thought about how it's going to deal with land development? The truth is that it's been hard for the government to sell land these days. I think the government should keep creating and developing land. I see that $65 million would be cost on the Cao Yi Chao study project. And there's only one item concerning Cao Yi Chao. artificial islands in this paper. This is because the government is going to spend a long time on this project. So my question is whether you are going to adjust the pace of developing these projects. Also, for computerization, you're going to spend some $2.5 billion. However, there is a lack of details about what these projects will be about under computerization. How come for certain projects you list out the details of the projects, but for the other projects which are going to cost $2.47 billion in total, there's a lack of the relevant information. So there is a lack of information for us members to decide whether we should approve the funding proposal. On the cost of land acquisition, I think this is a policy matter. Perhaps the administration would still want to give a reply. In relation to the $2.5 million to be spent on computerization, would you also give a reply? I'll invite the Lands Department to address the first questions on whether we will adjust the pace of development. The Development Bureau will give a reply. On computerization, I'll ask the DPO to give you more information.
Which one to answer? Yes, let me respond first. For 24-25, the government has even for Kutong North and Kutong South, for the remaining land lots, about 110 hectares would have to be resumed for Hong Shui Kiu Hachun second stage, and also for the other area, about 193 hectares. So that's about what we have done in 2024. I'm not interested in the size of land that you have resumed in 2024. You're going to spend some $20 billion on that. So I'd like to know the substance of that. What are the lots that you're going to acquire? And also, given the financial pressure that you're facing, so have you made adjustments to the effectiveness of that, so that in terms of the pacing of land acquisition, can that be made more reasonable? I'm not just asking for a figure as to how much land has been resumed in a particular area. That would not be very meaningful. So who would like to answer the question? Would you like to provide something in writing? And also on the $2.5 billion on computerization program. So can you give us a breakdown? Yes, Mr. So Chang Wing was asking about the cost for land acquisition. I think it's justified. Well, given the tight resources, both the Development Bureau and the Lands Department have looked at the priorities of the project. If you look at the $20 billion for land acquisition, about 80-90% would be used in the Northern Metropolis. And therefore, we are actually focusing on the most urgent projects. And as you understand it, when it comes to land formation, we will have to press ahead with that. As to land sales and so on, that would have to depend on market conditions. What about the $2.5 billion under the computerization program? So can you give us the details? That is about, from the DPO, please. Well, on the detailed breakdowns, in the original PWSC paper, towards the end of it, there are a number of tables, and there are two parts. One would be ongoing projects. All the projects have been listed out there, and then new projects have also been listed in a separate table. So a total of over 1,000 projects have been listed there. Yes, Undersecretary, can I supplement? Yes, every year when we submit our block allocation application, there would be all the details in the enclosures, including the cumulative spending and also the estimated cash flow and everything. So all those will be listed out in the enclosures. Okay. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you. Well, we will be approving $41.6 billion. I think the focus would be on whether or not we can achieve better saving and achieve better cost effectiveness. My first question is, well, for individual items, very often you have a figure and it's about how much working hours can be created for the professionals, the technocrats and so on. I understand that in the paper you haven't got those figures. So it's about the CWRF. And is it easy to come up with such figures? Because the public will have a better idea as to when the $41 billion is spent. Then, in fact, in terms of job creation, how many jobs can be created? And does the FSTB have a system to monitor individual projects or the cash flow of the Bureau? If yes, then can you share with us more about that system? Okay, one would be job creation. So are you able to quantify the number of jobs that can be created by these projects? Yes, Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. Well, according to our estimates for 2025-26, well, about 200 jobs will be created as a result of these projects, and that would be translated into 18,200 workers posts and 2,000 professional posts. So a total of 210,000 work months will be created. That has been listed in paragraph 16 of the paper. And if members are interested in individual projects, we can also provide the details. That's point number one. And number two, members said that when it comes to block allocation, internally, we have been monitoring the progress and there is also a mechanism in place to monitor the progress. And we have also reported that to this council. In fact, I can give you an example. Every year when we submit block allocation application, we would be setting out in the enclosures as to how much would be needed for the next year and also the budgeted cash flow and so on. That would include new projects and also those that have not been included in the application papers for the previous financial year. And if there are new items that have to be included, that would also be listed out in accordance with the existing mechanism. We would also regularly go to the PwC to submit quarterly report to report to members on the funding or spending so far. And also there would also be an annual report on the CWRF. There would also be breakdowns. And if in a particular financial year the actual spending has a 10% discrepancy from the approved budget, the controlling officer will also have to give an explanation in the report. So we'll be monitoring the progress, and under different mechanisms, we would also be reporting the relevant information to this council, and we would also be accountable to this council. Okay, in terms of the detail, at which you're reporting to this council, basically, you are doing that on a quarterly basis. Yes, we would be submitting quarterly reports to this council, but then internally, our controlling officers and the department would also be monitoring or keeping a close eye on those projects on an ongoing basis. Well, 3 more members in this council building have raised their hands to ask questions. And for those who have yet to press the button to request to speak, please come down and press the button, or else we will draw a line there and we will have to put everything to the vote. Next, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, thank you. I have 4 concerns. One is about the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal's refurbishment. Well, I noticed that for the refurbishment works, that would also include the VIP room. I don't know if you've been there. Well, how many times has the VIP room been used in the past? Has the utilization rate been so high that it justifies or warrants refurbishment? Well, when cruises arrive, how many people will need to use the VIP room, given the fact that these cruises are so fancy and luxurious? So I suggest that you should take a closer look into that. The more you can save, the better. And also for the shuttlecock, inspection, a boundary inspection center, it will be commissioned shortly, and about $17 million will be spent there. In fact, exactly how such money will be spent. And third, about the DPO's project, the very first item is about the DPO. With regard to government policy bureaus and also information security, there will be an audit, and you are getting funding for that. So exactly what you're going to do, exactly what are you going to do, and why has it been included under CWRF? If it's a new system, then I can understand it, but then you have not included those words there. So what exactly is that all about? And also head 705, subhead 70500EX, landslip prevention initiatives or measures. Many of these are ongoing projects, but then these are about long-term landslip prevention program. So I would suspect that, these are major problems because there might be major landslips causing serious problems. But then let's not forget that there are many small slopes. Well, in January this year, actually, I worked with the district councillors as well as the district officers in Sha Tin and also the land office people. We went to inspect Hin Tin Street's slope. In fact, there were some landslips, and the situation was really very messy. So I was asking which department that slope was under, and nobody was able to tell me. So in terms of landslip prevention, to what extent have you been able to implement that program? How serious are you taking it? Because no one is able to tell us when a landslip happens, in particular when it's not very serious. So what are the funding procedures? What money will be spent? And what would be done to deal with such situations? So 4 concerns. So, Bureau Director, Undersecretary, thank you for the questions. For the first 2 questions, I'll defer it to the Architectural Services Department, Shuttlecock and Kai-Tech. And then the third question has to do with the DPO, the Digital Policy Office, the audit program. And then on landslip prevention, I'll defer to the Civil Engineering Department. Well, on the VIP room at the cruise terminal, many times we have been asked that we have not been able to provide any details. This is a new item, and therefore we will provide the details later. And then for Shuttlecock, $17 million, that's for inspection. And in fact, the structure has been completed. The final touch is that we will need the fencing. Because at the Shanao Street, the fencing has not been completed, and therefore for the remaining amount, for the consultancy and contingency fee, so we would also have to settle the bill because we haven't settled the bill yet. And what about the audit to be conducted by the DPO? Yes, on the audit. Compliance audit, because of IT incidents, the threat has been escalating in recent years, and the DPO will be taking the lead. And I have initiated to make arrangements for different departments of the government to conduct this compliance audit. So we will randomly check the systems of some departments, and we will arrange for our staff to go to these departments to conduct a check on the extent that they are compliant with the security systems. Some members have said that security management has to be very stringent. They will have to be compliant because in many past incidents, they would conduct SRA when the system was first introduced. So they would do some security check. So they would do it from time to time in order to show that they have already done what is needed. But then for IT security, because the threats are escalating, and therefore we would require the entire management to be in line with our policy. For example, from time to time, we would hear that for some software systems, they might have identified some loopholes, and therefore for the compliance check that we are going to do, we would like to find out that where there are incidents involving such softwares, what are the management workflow of the departments. So to what extent would they be able to cope with the emergency situations? We would also be giving them advice as to what they should do. So this is almost like a random check on whether or not they are compliant with the current security policy. You have exceeded your time. But then, should that be placed under this head? Because we're talking about public works. We are talking about public works. This is an auditing work. This is an administrative work. You should have asked people to do it. What has that got to do with the computerization program? It's not about installation of a new system. It's not about maintenance of a system. You might need to spend the money, but then should it be placed under this item? That is my question. Okay. So are there justifications for you to put that under this head or subhead? Well, in fact, if you look at the funding purview, well, the emphasis might have to do with the management workflow, but then we would also have to take into account whether or not we need to review the softwares and whether or not there are loopholes to be plugged. For example, in the past, when departments apply for such auditing work, or if they want to do a system check, then they would always do it under head 710, and therefore, given the fact that this is an extension of what has been done before, we allow them to do that. Okay, on landslip prevention, you will have to provide a reply in writing because time's up.
Right.
Next member to speak, Dr. Junius Ho. Chairman, perhaps the FSTB can address my question about the general principle. The government is seeking approval for the block allocations. The purpose is to enhance government efficiency. In the past, we had sufficient reserve, and we relied on the government's gatekeeping role. And we didn't have the opportunity to really examine the figures. Perhaps the Public Accounts Committee would carefully examine the accounts. For us members, however, we didn't have the chance to do so. After the implementation of the improved electoral system, the Finance Committee has not been very busy. From Head 701 to Head 707, we are going to approve block allocation of $41 billion. And this is not an urgent funding approval. This is for year 2025 to 26. You're not asking for money for year 2024. Well, there are so many government representatives here, I'm not sure whether it's necessary. Well, let's look at the land acquisition. Is going to cost $24 billion, and for buildings works, $3.9 billion. And including all the other heads in total, it would cost about $41 billion. Many members have asked whether there's room to cut back on the expenditure. According to ArchSD, in year 2024, different departments made reports on compressing the cost. Well, you have to show us the reports. How did the DPO work with the different departments to come up with these reports? You only gave us oral reports. We actually have no idea how the money was spent. What I'm trying to say is that the funding you're asking for is not that urgent. It's not that you have to settle certain bills within a short period of time. This is for year 2025 to 26. The financial year has not started, and we're still waiting for the upcoming budget to be delivered. My question is, can we not approve the funding proposal today? Can we have more time to exercise due diligence and examine the figures in detail? Also, the budget is going to be announced on the 26th of February. And it was announced that in year 2023 to 24 there was a fiscal deficit of $139 billion. And this year we'll have another deficit of $100 billion. We therefore have to be precise and accurate. You need the endorsement from each of us. And at least you have to, for example, tell us that there is no more room to further compress costs. If we simply approve this funding proposal, we would be scolded and blamed by people, and we would be questioned by others whether we actually checked the figures carefully. Deputy Secretary, do you have any... Undersecretary, do you have any reply? Indeed, with the financial position we're facing, we understand the concerns of the member. For this funding proposal, on the 22nd and the 24th of January, we consulted the Public Works Subcommittee, and in the paper we listed out the different projects under the block allocations. Also, during the meetings at the Public Works Subcommittee, we had enough time to address members' concerns. And today, we are at the Finance Committee and we have another opportunity to examine the amounts in details. We also care a lot about the priorities of different projects. We would make an assessment on the scale of different projects, the maturity of different projects, as well as how urgent these projects are to set priorities for these projects. We also adhere to the no-frills principle, and we try our best to commit resources as and when justified. We hope members understand that we've been adhering to these principles. Let's see if the Permanent Secretary has anything to add. Well, Dr. Junius Ho has asked to speak for a second round. I thank Dr. Junius Ho for the questions. Dr. Ho, as well as other members, care a lot about whether there is room for us to compress costs for the different projects. We will try our best to do so. I have the following reply. First, is it urgent for us to get the funding approval? It is urgent. Every year, we seek the Finance Committee's approval for the block allocations. This involves about 14,000 projects. If we submit each of these 14,000 projects to the Public Works Subcommittee as well as the Finance Committee for approval, it might not be the most efficient way to do it. Also, as mentioned, we gave the opportunity for members to pose questions about the different projects at the different electrical panels. So we do hope that we'll be able to get the funding approval so that 2 months later, on the 1st of April, we can kickstart all these projects in the new financial year. Also, Dr. Ho asked whether we could provide more detailed information for members. Well, I agree. For example, we could perhaps tell members how much money was approved last year and how much money was actually spent in the previous financial year, and how come we asked for an estimate for land acquisition, and we ended up not spending all the funding for land acquisition. Well, we will review how we can provide more information for members next year. I see that 2 members have asked to speak for a second round. No, only Dr. Junius Ho. Then next member to speak, Ms. Doreen Kong. Chairman, the CWRF, Capital Works Reserve Fund, is not something new. It was established since 1982 in Hong Kong. I see that in the past few years, we approved funding under this fund. In year 2024-25, we approved $50.5 billion. While you asked for allocation for land acquisition, well, the estimate is actually lower than that of last year. So you're asking in total for $41.6 billion for the total block allocations. I want to know if you have already taken into consideration the government's fiscal position when you ask for this funding. Also, for all the projects listed out in the paper, can you tell us that you may not necessarily implement all these projects? For example, the VIP lounge mentioned by Mr. Lai Tong Kwok, you may not necessarily kickstart the project. Also, for a lot of these projects, there must be room for you to further compress costs. I think this is what members of the public want to know. Also, you mentioned about the quarterly report. I know that you did submit the quarterly reports in the past. However, I have a suggestion. In your future quarterly reports, could they be more detailed? You did mention how much money you spent in your quarterly reports. However, when you mentioned about project delays, you only mentioned that there were technical reasons and that you needed more time to vet the tender documents. I looked at the situation in Macau for their quarterly reports. They listed out the progress for each project, and if there were overrun or delays, there were reasons set out in the report. So my question is, will you consider making your quarterly report more detailed? Lastly, there are such funds in other places. For example, in New Zealand, they have something called Restart New South Wales Fund. It's kind of like the Capital Works Reserve Fund. In the UK, they have implemented a strategy. For example, they have something called the benefit cost ratio. That is, for each project, the benefit has to be greater than the cost for the project to be implemented. I think there needs to be a reform in this regard. Can the government make reforms in this regard to show members of the public that the government would try to achieve this? Undersecretary, we have taken into consideration the government's financial position. So when we examine the capital works cost, we assess the maturity, urgency, as well as the importance of the projects when we decide the priorities of the project. We have heard members' views on the different projects and items. The different government departments, when taking forward these projects, would make adjustments based on the suggestions of the members. We have asked for the allocation, but it doesn't mean that we'll have to spend all the money approved. Also, at the end of each financial year, we submit an annual report. If the actual expenditure is 50% different compared to the project estimate, we would give a reason. Member asked whether we could provide more information in our quarterly report. We will review this and we will improve our quarterly report. I hope I'm able to explain our work process, and we will make adjustments accordingly. Well, I hope you will take into consideration members' views. 3 members are waiting to speak for the first round, and 2 members have asked to speak for the second round. Given the time now, I want to know if there are other members who would like to speak. Our meeting is scheduled to end at 6:15. If you want to speak, please press the request to speak button now so that I can have a better idea of how we can make use of the time. Ms. Maggie Chen, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, and Mr. Tony Che are waiting to speak for the first round, and Dr. Junius Ho and Ms. Carmen Khan are waiting to speak for the second round. If after Mr. Tony Che no other members have pressed the button, I will draw a line there. Ms. Maggie Chen. I have 2 major questions. The first one about head 703, subhead 3101GX. I know that some members asked about the same public toilet projects. There will be 3 new public toilet projects as well as 1 reconstruction of an existing public toilet, in total 4 such projects. And in total they will cost about $87 million. That's the project estimate for these 4 projects. With the financial position of the government now, would the project estimate too high? Also, is it necessary to construct the existing public toilet for one of the projects? And for the 3 new public toilet projects, what is the expected utilization rate? That's my first major question. My second major question is about head 704, subhead 4100DX, about drainage. Compared to last year, the project estimate this year is 5.02% higher. Why is that? Is it because of manpower, equipment, environmental protection measures, or electricity?
Well, head 703, I'll defer to the ASD, and then for 104, I'll ask the DSD to answer. Yes, there are several public toilets. One would be in Li Yumun. It is in progress, and the main reason is in the adjoining site that has been released, and therefore we have to develop this is ongoing. And for the pipes and so on, there are some difficulties because of the underground pipes, because after we have dug up the land, a lot of the problems or other obstacles would have to be removed. And also for the other 3, they are the enhancement projects under the FEHD, and they have been very run down, and adding up, that would add up to some $80 million. In fact, usually that's because many people are using them, and that's the reason why we have to upgrade them. And what about the DSD? Sorry, Chairman. In this regard, can I ask for further details? I'm not happy with the reply at all. So you would only improve that because there are many people using that, but then we have a budget deficit. So have you looked at the number of people using that? Is that worth the money? Because you're talking about 4 public toilets costing some $87 million, not $8 million. And I think it's a very sloppy answer, because apparently they can just use the money as they wish. And I would find that hardly acceptable. There is no need for them to supplement because they don't have the figures. Do you have the figures? Can you provide that later? In terms of the usage rate, the number of people using them, I have no such figures with me now. Well, can you supply that later? Yes, no problem. I'm not happy at all because you're talking about 87 million, and yet this is a very critical figure, and you have no idea as to how many people are using those toilets, and you're prepared to spend $87 million. So it's like flushing the toilet. You're flushing the money out. Well, they may not have all the figures available at hand. I can understand that. Since they have promised that they would provide the figures after the meeting, I think we should allow them to do so. Next, DSD. Second question. Yes, thank you for the question. First, under subhead 4100DX, as said in 24-25, for the approved funding of $1.3 billion, and for 25-26, we're proposing about $1.4 billion, up by about 5%. In 2025-26, for the new projects, as reported in the paper, so there would be about 131 new items. And out of those 130 items, for spending to be made in 25-26, 60% would have to do with sewage drains and also rainwater collection pipes. There would need to be improvements, and 15% has to do with the upgrading of sewage treatment plants. So some time left. They have not been able to answer my question. Which part will see the rise in cost? Is it for equipment or what? Well, mainly the increase would be on new items. As we have set out in the paper, we have set out 10 new items. That would be in different parts of the territory. They are upgrading projects and also investigations. Next, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the CWRF block allocation, you're talking about a lump sum, and you're coming to this council for funding approval. This mechanism has been in place for a long time, and I'm sure members know it very well. That is, by the time when a project has reached a certain stage requiring certain amount of money, they will have to go through the process. They will have to come to the PWSC, and then they will have to come to this finance committee for funding approval. So they will have to first go to the panel, and then to the PWC, and then this committee. In fact, that would include many minor works projects, including slope repair and maintenance, waterworks, and also LCSD projects. Many of these minor projects have to be carried out. And this time, the total amount is about the same as last year's, about 410 and 41.6 billion. And last year it was 41.3. But then out of the 41.6, 28 billion has to do with land acquisition. So that's a reserve fund for developing land, because you need to resume land. And then 2.5 billion has to do with computerization. After deducting these two, in fact, the block allocation for capital works would be reduced to 14.2 billion. So down by some 0.5%. And how many projects are there? Over 10,000. So on average, every project would cost about 1 million. And if you ask each and every one for details, then you will have to have the meeting until next year. Well, many of these are pressing projects, because some of them are ongoing projects, and they need to get the funds in order to continue with them. And some would also have to start works, because the 1st of April would be the start of the new financial year, and they would need these funds for the public works projects. And earlier on at the PWSC meeting, I also spent some time to elaborate on this idea, because we have been through some difficult times, because the opposition camp would be making use of that to filibuster, and in the end we have not been able to cast our votes on that, and they had to go straight to the FC, because it's already late March, and they had to get the approval before the end of the financial year. That has to do with people's livelihood, and that has to do with different sectors. It's not just about the construction sector, because construction works would also have to be supported by many sectors. The reason why is very pressing, because I've been through that for many years, and every year there has been a lot of discussion, and I do have the responsibility to set out the situation for members' information. I don't have many questions for those officials here, because basically I have that experience as a electrical member, and that mechanism has been in place for a long time. And we have to have this basic concept. That is, we have the responsibility to scrutinize government's funding proposals, and at the same time, we have to be very critical when it comes to scrutinizing these projects. But then there has to be a principle to adhere to. That is, for the day-to-day, very minute detail work, we will have to leave it to the department to hold on to their own standards. If we are not prepared to give them this very little free hand, then basically nothing can be done. And if we were to scrutinize each and every project, it may not be the best approach to this. And therefore, we have to let members understand this. Yes, thank you for your explanation. And as I said, after Dr. Lowe's remarks, I'll have to draw a line there. So any further questions? Okay, Secretary, you can draw a line there. Next, Mr. Tony, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. As some members have pointed out, well, under the CWRF, the annual block allocation is nothing new. That has been in place for a long time. And basically, even for under the Public Works Subcommittee, when we discuss this issue, well, when it comes to the release of information by the government, they have been very cooperative all along. The fact that it involves so many minor works projects involving not very big sums. So when we have meetings, the administration has always been able to provide a lot of information. Even if they do not have the information at hand, they would always be prepared to supply the information afterwards. So whether it's today or at the PWSC meetings, our members have been able to solicit information on papers and on individual projects and so on. So, of course, there is always room for improvement by the government. Now that the SAR government is now faced with this very difficult financial situation, and as a result, members are more concerned about this, and therefore, they are now suggesting that there are ways to improve the provision of information so that would also reduce a lot of unnecessary questions. I hope that can be achieved in the future. Second, as you might have noticed, for the $41.6 billion being applied for, it might seem to be a very colossal amount. But then, as some have pointed out, 60% has to do with land acquisition. So that would amount to some $22.48 billion. And I'd like to say a few words on this too. Well, it's expected that on land acquisition, they would need that amount to do it. But then when compared to other works projects, well, some projects are underway, and there are also new projects that will commence in the coming year or so, and they will need the funding of a certain amount. So you have done some estimates, but then it doesn't mean that that would be what is needed for that particular project. In some cases, they may not be completed by the end of a couple of years, and therefore, on land acquisition, have you adopted the same approach? Because apparently there was a view that, let's say, if you're able to get some $20 billion, and in fact, what you have to spend in the coming year or so may not be that much. And then in the end, you will have to pay that out after all. But then, should you also apply the same logic when it comes to land acquisition cost? For two questions. First, any room for improvement? And second, how land acquisition cost should be expressed in the paper? Well, on land acquisition, I'll see if the lands colleagues can reply. Yes? Which one from the lands department? Okay, Ms. Leung. Yes, can I respond to the questions first? Well, there are some forms in the paper setting out the individual project how much would be spent on land acquisition and what's the estimated budget for the coming year. So the principle is that we estimate the progress of the project, and also in 25-26 how much would be needed for land acquisition. So we have done the budgeting on that basis. So we are not saying that we would be spending the entire amount in 25-26. So for the $24.8 billion, am I right in saying that that's your best estimate, and according to your estimate, you're going to spend that much in the coming year? So can it be done like other projects? So you are getting that amount and you expect to spend that much, but then by the time when you actually have to spend it, there might be a discrepancy. Would that be very substantial? And if there is huge discrepancy from your estimates, then I think you should have expressed it differently, so that people would have the impression that you may not need to spend that much, you're not getting that much. You may need to get that estimates, but then you don't necessarily have to spend that much. I think that would help when it comes to asking the public or asking this council to approve your funding proposal. Thank you for your comment and suggestion. In fact, that has also got to do with how well we express it in our paper. So for the budgets that we have come up with, if we estimate that in the end we may not need to spend that much, as to how we can express or explain it better to the public, we will look at it with the relevant policy bureaus to see how we can improve it. Thank you for your comment. Next, Mr. Hacken Chan, I agree that the administration will have to take the lead in carrying out some projects in order to revive the economy. But then we have a serious budget deficit right now, and therefore you will have to be more careful in listening to us, because we have to make sure that money is spent in the right area or right place. And therefore, I think the remarks by members are very meaningful and substantial. For example, some $90 million will be spent on public toilets, and people will have the impression whether or not this is necessary. I've also identified several projects which I'd like to clarify with you. For example, 705, you have this cement. You have this sustainable study on the supply of cement in Hong Kong. Is it necessary? Because for cement supply, I think it has always been supplied by the private sector. Are you suggesting that the administration should resume all of those plants, and then you would be the sole supplier for that? How come you're going to spend $11 million on that? And also about 4 to 5 toilets will have to be built, and several schools will have to do it. And one would need to do that one because one has to do with the disabled students. But then the construction of the lifts, would that be used by the primary school students or by the teachers? So you propose that in 2018, 2019. And then for the students that would need to use the lifts, they might have graduated already. And how come you're still building it? So are you not encouraging people to walk the stairs instead of taking the lifts? So I'm not saying that these schools should not build the lifts or elevators, but then, you made a suggestion or proposal in 2018-19, and it's been some time since then now. So why don't you wait until later? Because you have a budget deficit. And also under Head 710, Environmental Protection Department is also going to build a marine garbage management network. So you are guessing where the garbage would flow to. So what is that system for? I have not looked into that very seriously. I have not taken part at the PWSC meeting, but then I was thinking whether or not that money can be saved. So that's my pure objective. Whether or not certain sums can be saved, you will have to justify it to the public. All right, we are spending $40 million to build the lifts for the kids, and also for the cement study. That would also help the development of the construction sector. That would also be right. And also for the marine garbage information system, that would also be good to the public, because we can make the harbor cleaner. Well, you will have to justify everything.
Undersecretary, when we assess the projects, we of course attach importance to the cost effectiveness, and we have to make sure that the policy objectives would be achieved. Head 705 CCED, 708 the Education Bureau, and 710 DPO. Yes, Mr. Ma. Concrete is a type of construction materials necessary for our infrastructure development. We'll need a huge supply of concrete for the development of the northern metropolis. How can we maintain a steady supply chain? We'll have to carry out a study on it. A number of concrete manufacturers or factories will be affected. So we'll have to identify new factories, and in order to do so, we need to carry out study on, for example, traffic impact assessment as well as environmental impact assessment. With the huge demand for concrete, we also want to explore whether we can have a low carbon concrete so that we can reduce the carbon footprint. Yes, Mr. Fan, the surveyor. Some members asked a similar question just now about lift installation. This was announced in the 2018 policy address, and it was first brought up in the financial year 2018-2019. This is for schools without any lifts and for school buildings without any lifts. These lifts are not for ordinary students or teachers. They are for students with mobility issues or students who are injured or who are ill. These 5 schools with lift installation programs, they currently have no lifts, and that's why we have to install these lifts for people in need. Yes, EPD. For this marine refuse management system, this is an ongoing project, and we asked for funding for the cash flow. Marine refuse is a global problem. We have 1,200 kilometers of coastline in Hong Kong. The EPD have been, through the use of drones as well as image surveillance, to monitor the situation, and it refers the problem to other departments including the AFCD, the LCSD as well as the FEHD to help deal with the issue. So this management system is to enhance the uploading of images to the platform. Also, through the use of CCTV as well as big data analytics and AI technologies, images could be analyzed in a better way so that the relevant departments can follow up on the marine refuse problem. Dr. Simon Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I actually asked some of the questions at the PWSC meeting. Overall speaking, for this funding proposal, considering that these projects have to do with people's livelihood and also that we have to sustain the government's operation during the this economic cycle, I give my support to this proposal. However, there is a lack of information for us to have a better understanding of the projects. Overall speaking, well, with or without a fiscal deficit, I think the government has to think about how to make better use of its money. Mr. Gary Chen said we have to commit resources as and when justified. And in order to do so, it's not easy. So I think there needs to be a performance assessment system. We need KPIs to assess whether we need more money for the different projects. We can make use of technologies to do so. Like Ms. Maggie Chan said, for the public toilet projects, you can make use of small devices to project the utilization rate of the public toilets. This will benefit your planning as well as for the funding proposal. You'll have a better ground to think about whether it is justified for you to come up with future funding proposals. Thank you. 3 members are waiting to speak for the second round. I don't normally allow members to speak about policy matters. On the Capital Works Reserve Fund, members asked about planning as well as the concept of this fund. I understand this because members did not have the opportunity to talk about these at the Public Works Subcommittee stage. Perhaps the government could think about whether it's possible for members to talk about these issues before it comes to the Finance Committee. Members should have the chance to talk about these at the different panels. We are supposed to focus on financial issues at this committee. However, a lot of members asked about policy matters. For other items, I would not allow this. However, for the Capital Works Reserve Fund, members did not have a chance at the different panels to express their views. I hope the administration can think about this. I think the policy matters brought up by members are important. However, they should not be discussed in this committee. Dr. Junius Ho, 4 minutes. What Chairman said is very right. The administration is simply asking us to approve the funding proposal. Some members sit on the Public Works Subcommittee, some do not. We do need comprehensive information for us to make a decision. We are not filibustering. We experienced filibustering, and what we're doing now is exercising due diligence. For example, Mr. Gary Chan talked about 701. We have to spend within limits. My question is this. Even though this fund was established in the 80s, we have to scrutinize the funding proposal carefully. With the implementation of the improved electoral system, we should have the room to scrutinize the figures carefully. Also, we've been talking about new productive forces, and we've been talking about enhancing speed and quantity. However, we don't know which department or which director is responsible for the project estimate. The DPO is simply telling us that there is someone monitoring the cost. We need someone to be responsible for checking the project estimate. We need that person to sign on the paper to see that the figures have been checked. Well, we have sat here for some 3 hours now, and I don't want to end up voting in favor of this funding proposal, while I still have doubts about the information. Undersecretary, I thank the member for the comments. I want to stress a few things. First, the government attaches importance to the delegation of power under the block allocations, and we ask the relevant officers to, based on the delegation, create subheads, and we have to make sure that the projects and subheads created would be cost effective. So we take into consideration the resources we have as well as the manpower we have. To give you an example, say a project exceeds $10 million, the relevant department will have to prepare a document listing out the scope of the project, the justifications for the project, and so on. And the project will have to go through different levels of approval before the project could be commenced. So we do attach importance to the use of power in this regard as well. Also, for category T projects ranging from $30 to $50 million, our PSGO has been monitoring the cost of these projects. In relation to the block allocation system, could there be a change to this mechanism? We're talking about over 10,000 projects, and all these projects have implications on people's livelihood as well as our city's economy. Some of the projects, as mentioned, are ongoing, and if we cannot get the funding approval before the 1st of April and carry on with these projects on the 1st of April, it will have a huge impact on people's livelihood as well as our economy. So we have to have the funding approval in a timely manner. Also, we value the importance of communication. We have talked about these at the Public Works Subcommittee. But of course, we do think that there is a room for us to improve the communication mechanism. For example, can there be improvement in relation to how we describe the projects? Also, can we have more occasions where we can discuss these projects so that members can express their views on the policy matters? Also, can we come up with KPIs for these projects? There is room to improve all these, and we thank members for their suggestions on these.
Next, Ms. Carmen Khan, also 4 minutes. Yes, thank you for telling us this because this is a block allocation funding from 701 to 711. So as far as this council is concerned, we are giving you the delegated authority so that under block allocation, we are delegating the authority to you, and that will also include the principle of using the money only where it's necessary. And then on land acquisition, 60%, accounting for 60% of the $41.6 billion that you're applying for. And in 23-24, out of the $9.9 billion, you only spent $5.5 billion. And in 24-25, you have not been able to use up the $34.2 billion as applied for. You've only managed to use $24.8 billion. And therefore, system-wise, we'd like to enhance the monitoring in order to make sure that you would be using your money wisely. And secondly, after giving you the delegated authority, I hope that you will step up the efforts in reducing the discrepancy in your estimates and actual spending. With that done, then I would be prepared to support your funding proposal. Thank you. Thank you for your proposal. Well, both are achievable because on land acquisition, Ms. Khan and other members have also said that in terms of the way it is expressed, and also in terms of the effectiveness, you would like to step up monitoring and auditing. So we will discuss with the Policy Bureau. I think we would there would be room for us to further improve it. On the quarterly report on how the money is used, we can give you more details so as to reassure members that they are in better control. So I'm sure we will be able to improve it. Next, Ms. Maggie Chen, also 4 minutes. Thank you. Well, the reply that was given suggests that the quarterly report would be more detailed and there would be more communications with members. And when I consider whether or not I should support it, indeed, that would give me greater confidence. But then, given the current budget deficit, to approve such a colossal amount of money would still make me nervous. So my concern is on Head 704, the drainage works. Well, for that particular drainage works, yes, there is an increase by 5% because there are more projects. But then, as far as drainage services are concerned, in terms of the safety of the works and also works methods, they are all very important. And also when it comes to occupational safety and also the equipment to be used in the course of the works, well, what's the percentage of these vis-a-vis the overall budget? And also on the procurement of materials and so on. So have you updated that? Would you be procuring materials which are most costly or most expensive in the market? In fact, there might be more low-cost suppliers, and on the mainland the standards might be higher, and yet you have not included those in your suppliers list. Have you done that? Under Secretary. Well, please turn on the mic for the Under Secretary. Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your question. On procurement, in fact, like other works projects, when we carry out improvement works or public works projects, member referred to occupational safety. Indeed, we attach a lot of importance to that. Last year, the Labour Department also announced some guidelines when you work in enclosed environments, because many of our projects involve working in enclosed environment, and in new contracts, measures have been enhanced to improve occupational safety as to what equipment should be used. We have an open mind. We would always try to explore in the market as to what is available and what is the state of art technology. Well, we are also trying to procure some pumps from the mainland in order to make sure that where there is flooding, we'll be able to clear the roads faster in order to reduce flooding when there is torrential downpour. I hope that in your quarterly report, you can tell us more about working in enclosed environment and what kind of equipment you would procure to relieve flooding and so on. In particular, on the mainland, I understand that there are suppliers who can supply cheaper and better equipment. Yes, we're talking about different subheads. On the issues that the honourable member was most concerned about, we will discuss with the department as to how we can give you further details. Yes, after I drew the line, a member would like to have a minute to clarify certain points. Yes, Mr. Tang Fei. Yes, several members have talked about the school lifts. Can I provide you with further information? The Bureau does not need to respond. In fact, for school lifts, they are not for students. They are not for students to save the steps that they have to climb, because, for primary schools, at most there would only be 7 stories. But then the most important thing is to help the teacher and also the prefect to transport some chairs and tables, some classroom furniture, and also for the school prefects so that they be getting the workbooks for the teachers and so on. And in some old school campuses, even the plans will have to be modified because in the initial design there was no lift whatsoever, and they will also have to queue up for the installation of lifts, and very often that would take a long time. Whether or not there is room for adjustment, that's something for the government. Thank you. Okay, FCR 2024-25-49. I'll put that to the vote. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Okay. Any objection? Yes, Ms. Julius Ho. Okay, majority of the members present are in favor of the proposal, and I declare the proposal passed. The next meeting will be held on the 21st of February. I declare that the meeting is closed. You can enjoy your Valentine's Day. Thank you.